Chapter 477. No matter how unwilling Yao Yu was, she could not give anyone face, but she couldn't ignore the captain Mogfuli. Mogfuli's strength in the 7th grade was much stronger than her. She knew that this time she was able to participate in this special mission. A big reason was because of her good luck. There were many people in the 7th grade who were stronger than her. Those strong people didn't participate in this competition, which gave her the opportunity to participate in this mission. Yao Yu didn't dare to offend Mogfuli, who had a prominent reputation in the 7th grade. Don't look at how she mocked and ridiculed Fengwu and others. It was only because they were young and their strength couldn't surpass her. So she had nothing to fear. There were only 3 rooms, but their group had 10 people. Among these 10 people, there were 6 boys and 4 girls. When they were dividing the rooms, the 6 boys were divided into 2 rooms, and the 4 girls were divided into 1 room. This division was very fair. Originally, there were more people on the boys' side. Although Yao Yu wanted to stay alone, she didn't dare to provoke Mogfuli. She could only agree with this division method with an ugly face. The girls' room wasn't very big. Fortunately, there were 2 beds in this room. 2 people to 1 bed was completely fine. But the problem was, who would share a bed with Yao Yu? I'll sleep on this bed, you 3 will sleep on the other. Yao Yu didn't think about sharing a bed with any of them. She directly laid down on the bed, and announced the ownership of the bed under her. Senior Yao Yu, you're too much. Irene couldn't help but slap the table and stood up. I'm the senior, listen to me or listen to you. Yao Yu looked up and said with a smile that wasn't a smile. She couldn't deal with Mogfuli, but she couldn't deal with these girls. You. Irene still wanted to argue. Unfortunately, Yao Yu didn't pay attention to the 3 of them. She casually took out a romance novel from her space ring and began to read it. She didn't care what Irene was saying at all. Irene was so angry that she almost fainted. What kind of people were these? 7th grade seniors? As seniors, shouldn't they take care of their juniors? What was with all this fighting over beds? Flip's table. Zicheng saw that Irene wanted to rush up and argue with her, so he immediately stopped her and shook his head lightly. Forget it, I'll listen to senior sister. Although Zicheng also felt that Yao Yu was too much, he didn't want to make things difficult for her because of this small matter. Irene also knew that no matter how overboard this Yao Yu was, she was still a 7th-year senior. Going against her would not end well for 2nd-year students like them. Taking a deep breath, Irene decided to endure it for now. If there was a chance, she would definitely make Yao Yu suffer. What do we do now? Sleeping with the 3 of us is a little difficult. Irene said. Wasn't it difficult? This bed was just an ordinary single bed. It was a little crowded even for 2 people, not to mention 3 people. Even if the 3 of them were all slender young girls, it was still impossible to sleep with 3 people. How about I make a bed on the floor? You and Fengwu can sleep on the bed. Zicheng thought about it and said considerately. Irene snorted disdainfully in her heart. The female lead really didn't forget to show her kindness and magnanimity no matter where. Those who didn't know her true nature would probably be touched by her kindness. Thinking of this, she turned her head to look at Fengwu, who hadn't spoken all this time. After interacting with Fengwu a few times, she also knew that Fengwu's temperament was simple. She was a little worried that Fengwu would be deceived. After looking over, Irene immediately knew that her worries were unnecessary. Fengwu didn't have any thoughts at all. You guys sleep on the bed. I have this. After Fengwu finished speaking, she took out a hammock from her spatial ring. This hammock was bought by Fengwu long ago. Fengwu usually bought things that interested her when she went shopping. Although she bought the most food, she also bought a lot of miscellaneous things. Taking out the hammock from her spatial ring, she tied the hammock to the corner of the room and spread a comfortable blanket over it. This way, it looked even more comfortable than their bed. This bed was only used in ordinary people's homes. Under the bed was a wooden board and a quilt, so the comfort was very limited. Fengwu made her bed, took off her shoes and lay on it to try it out. She narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. Just like that, the bed separation incident passed. At least it didn't cause any big disputes. Irene walked out of the room and found a more secluded place to contact Shozo. Knowing that Shozo had already arrived, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It had been more than 10 days since the end of the individual competition. 15 days ago, when the final results of the individual competition were released, many people couldn't believe it. How did the three girls stand out in front of so many seniors? If it wasn't for the fact that the entire process was broadcasted outside the arena, no one would believe that the three girls had done something that many seniors couldn't do. After the competition ended, they were brought together to the Vice Dean's office, and the Vice Dean personally issued this mission. The school wanted them to enter the desert wasteland and find the sealed heart of wood. Legend had it that 1,000 years ago, the desert wasteland was once a beautiful grassland. However, for some unknown reason, the grassland became a desert, and no plants could grow there anymore. No one knew that this grassland, which was originally full of vitality, was also the birthplace of the heart of wood. 1,000 years ago, when the heart of wood was born, it only had a weak spiritual intelligence. It was very weak, but to a wood-type magician, it was more important than a divine artifact. 1,000 years ago, in order to obtain the heart of wood, countless wood-type experts entered this place. Later, a great war broke out, and the oasis became a desert. The heart of wood was also sealed by a powerful person, and since then no one had seen the heart of wood. Now that the seal was about to be lifted, the heart of wood would reappear in the world. No one knew how many experts would be attracted this time. The Star Hall and the Notre Dame du Starlight knew that with the reappearance of the heart of wood, many experts would gather here and start a life and death struggle. Although they knew they couldn't stop it. Whether it was the Star Hall or the Notre Dame du Starlight, the purpose of their existence was to protect the human world from being invaded by foreign races. They couldn't interfere in the fight for resources among the human race. Because of these reasons, the Notre Dame du Starlight only sent a few of them over, and didn't send more powerful teachers. As for the Star Hall, it was said that there were already people rushing over, but those people wouldn't intervene in this fight. After reading the original work, she naturally knew that the Notre Dame du Starlight wanted to obtain the heart of wood. She didn't want to have any ambition, but only wanted to use the power of the heart of wood to change the environment of the desert wasteland, and return the desert wasteland to its former state. Chapter 478. Because of these reasons, the Notre Dame du Starlight only sent a few of them over, and didn't send a more powerful teacher. As for the Star Hall, it was said that there were already people rushing over, but those people wouldn't intervene in this fight. After reading the original work, she certainly knew that the Notre Dame du Starlight wanted to get the heart of wood. She didn't want to have any ambition. She just wanted to use the power of the heart of wood to change the desert wasteland's environment, and return it to its previous state. Perhaps this process would be very slow, but if it succeeded, it would definitely benefit the people. Unfortunately, the female lead in the original work obtained the heart of wood, and made it form a contract. Once the heart of wood formed a contract with a human, of course, it was impossible to put it back in the desert wasteland, so the school's plan couldn't be realized. With so many variables in this life, she didn't believe that Zicheng's female lead aura would still be so invincible. After a simple dinner, Fengwu and the others went to bed early. The next day, everyone began to buy the supplies they needed to enter the desert. From food to daily necessities, there would be no place for them to replenish after entering the desert, so of course, they had to buy it all at once. The townspeople actually loved and hated the sudden appearance of outsiders. These outsiders contributed to the town's economic development, but also decreased the town's safety by a lot. Recently, there were people fighting every 2 to 3 days, and some unscrupulous adventurers openly molested women on the streets. In a short time, the whole town was filled with complaints. The people here couldn't wait for these adventurers to disappear as soon as possible. If they could enter and never come out, that would be even better. A strange treasure was about to appear in the desert wasteland, but it was just a guess and a rumor. No one could confirm this point, so most of the people who came here were still in a wait-and-see state. Although some people had already entered the desert, more people still stayed in the town. They might want to stay for a few more days, or they might want to wait for the news to be confirmed before entering the desert wasteland. In short, no matter what these people were planning, with so many adventurers with different personalities staying here, It was a big trouble for the town's residents. Although the adventurers would not kill ordinary people at will, they would be bullied from time to time, which made it difficult for the residents here to have a good impression of the adventurers. In just a short period of time, some of the better-looking girls had already hidden in their own houses and wouldn't go out easily. Now the ones walking outside were all ordinary-looking women. The girls didn't dare to rashly go out with their fellow disciples. The townspeople already had a certain degree of fear and dissatisfaction with the adventurers. It was no wonder that Feng Wu and the others couldn't get any information when they entered the town yesterday. On the third day, the group of 10 entered the desert on foot. There were no signs of life in this desert. This was a land of death that no one would set foot in. Anyone who wanted to enter this desert could only choose to walk. No one knew why, but as long as they were living creatures, they didn't want to set foot in this desert. It was as if there was something terrifying inside. It was said that a few days ago, there was a soldier who wanted to ride his horse in, but the horse didn't move at all. It had a frightened look on its face, and refused to go in no matter what. Even when it was almost beaten to death, it didn't want to move an inch. This happened many times, and in the end, everyone had no choice but to obediently walk in. In the desert wasteland, there was only endless yellow sand and the scorching sun. There were no creatures to be seen. Stepping on this land, the 10 people instantly felt a suffocating pressure. There was also a kind of bone-chilling fear. It was as if there was a man-eating monster in front of them. And this monster was waiting to swallow them all. Feng Wu looked at the endless yellow sand and touched the Rue Beast baby on her old bag. Her eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. This place is so strange. As soon as I walked in, I felt like I stepped into the gates of hell. Donovan said as he flicked his fingers. Indeed, it is not a good place. Huozhua nodded and responded. Everyone be careful. This place is not simple. Mo Geoffrey said expressionlessly. Everyone's hearts were heavy. They all felt that this mission would not be so easy to complete. But thinking about it, for this mission, the school even held some kind of extreme survival challenge. Making such a big scene, it would be strange if the mission was simple. This place has evil energy. Moreover, the evil energy has formed clouds. Everyone be careful not to be disturbed by the evil energy. Yao Yu's face was ugly as she looked into the distance. Is it an undead? Mo Geoffrey frowned and asked. It could be, or it could be something else. We have to wait until we see it to know. Yao Yu said. Irene and Zicheng had a new level of respect for Yao Yu. They originally thought that she would only find trouble with them, and put on the airs of a senior. They didn't expect her to have some ability. Yao Yu was a very rare necromancer in the school. Even in Notre Dame du Starlight, there were not many necromancers. Although they were all students of the mage department, they were all specially guided by specialized teachers. In the school, necromancers were the most mysterious existences. Although Yao Yu's character was not that good, she was definitely a strong one among necromancers. This was also the reason why she was able to successfully obtain a place among so many people. With Yao Yu's reminder, everyone carefully walked towards the place marked on the map. Before leaving Notre Dame du Starlight, the school gave them a map. This map recorded the place where the Heart of Wood was sealed. What they had to do was to bring the Heart of Wood back to the school and hand it over to the vice dean. Rushing from here to the sealed place was not something that could be done in a day or two. Without coming to the desert wasteland, one wouldn't know how big this place was. Walking for 1 or 2 years might not be enough to finish. And the sealed place was in a secret place in the desert wasteland. If they wanted to go there, they would have to walk for at least 3 months in this place to be able to reach it. During these 3 months, they couldn't get lost. Once they got lost, it wouldn't be something that could be done in 3 months. The day in the desert was very long. They walked for a long time before ushering in the night. At night, the temperature dropped to -10 degrees. The cold wind blew on people's body, making them feel as if their whole body was about to be frozen. Fortunately, this was not the virtual world arena. No one had their Dou-Qi and magic sealed. With the protection of Dou-Qi and magic, they didn't feel that unbearable. However, everyone still wore heavy coats. Since they couldn't hurry at night, everyone had to find a place to camp. They brought a lot of food and drink here, so there was no need to prepare food. Chapter 479. The desert wasteland at night seemed to have a different kind of loneliness. Standing on this piece of land, one couldn't help but feel a dull feeling in their hearts. Due to their depressed mood, everyone didn't sleep well. After a night's rest, everyone continued on their way. There were quite a few people who entered the desert wasteland recently. They didn't walk for long before they met a group of people who were going the same way. At this time, when they met other people in this place, no one was in the mood to stop and greet them. Each of them carefully stared at the people around them, afraid that these people would rush up and attack them. Fortunately, there weren't many people who directly attacked. Although everyone was looking for treasure, if they didn't see the shadow of the treasure, they naturally wouldn't do such a stupid thing. The desert wasteland was very big. No one knew where the treasure would appear. Although they didn't know the specific location, many people guessed that if the treasure really appeared, the most likely place would be near the center of the desert wasteland. Because of this guess, most people who were interested in the treasure went to the center. 2 months later, they had already walked more than half of the journey. On this day, they were walking through the desert as usual. However, they didn't expect to suddenly see a dilapidated castle in front of them. This castle looked very old, as if it had been damaged by some kind of power. The walls were full of traces of time. Why is there a building here? Goth looked at the dilapidated castle in front of him with some confusion. They had been in the desert wasteland for 2 months. In these 2 months, they hadn't encountered any creatures, nor had they seen any buildings. They hadn't even seen a broken canopy. Now they suddenly saw a castle in front of them. Although this castle looked very dilapidated, it was still a proper building. Do you want to go in and take a look? Tang Nuod asked Mojiofri. Mojiofri shook his head. This place gives me a bad feeling. For safety's sake, there's no need to go in. As the team leader, Mojiofri was of course considering the safety of the mission. This place is really not right. We walked for 2 months and didn't see any buildings. Suddenly, a castle appeared. No matter how I think about it, it's a bit strange. Mingxi said. Yao Yu, what do you think? Huazhua turned to ask Yao Yu. Yao Yu suddenly took out her magic wand and mumbled something. Finally, a white light rushed into the castle. After the white light, nothing appeared. Yao Yu secretly frowned. That shouldn't be the case. He clearly felt that the yin qi in this place was very heavy. Why wasn't there any demonic aura? What's wrong? Seeing Yao Yu frowning, Mojiofri asked. Nothing, my magic didn't sense the existence of the quest spirit. Yao Yu said. Are we still going in? Irene asked. She remembered that such an ancient castle had also appeared in the original work, and the female lead had encountered danger in the castle. In this place, the female lead and male lead met again, and it was the place where their relationship took a step further. However, the people in the team this time were different from the ones in the original work. Would they still enter the castle this time? When she read the original novel, she wanted to complain. It was clearly a very strange thing for a house to suddenly appear in such a dangerous place, okay? How could the female lead and the others go in to rest without thinking about anything? This IQ was too high. Let's leave this place. Mojiofri said concisely. Irene silently sighed in relief. They had finally escaped a calamity. As long as they didn't go in, they would be fine. There was great danger inside. If it wasn't for the light of the male and female lead, it was very likely that many people would have died here. Everyone was about to leave, but suddenly the sky was filled with dense clouds. A heavy rain fell without any warning. If it was just ordinary rain, it wouldn't be a problem. However, this rain could actually gradually melt the magic and doqi barrier that they made. If they couldn't find a place to take shelter from the rain before the barrier melted, who knew what would happen when the rain fell on them? As a last resort, the group of 10 still entered the castle that they didn't really want to enter. The inside of the castle looked the same as the outside. It was very shabby, and there was a lot of dust and debris inside. At a glance, one could tell that this house had been abandoned for a long time. Zicheng and Irene used magic to help the others clear out a clean area. Everyone sat there and no one spoke. Fengwu's large eyes swept over the surroundings from time to time. Her eyes flashed with doubt, but she didn't say anything. Mingxi held Fengwu's hand and didn't say anything. This rain that fell without warning made them feel very unusual. Mingxi had a feeling that perhaps this rain was specially made to keep them here. He just didn't know who the person who wanted to make use of this rain to keep them here was. Damn, this rain is too heavy. Luckily we ran fast enough. Otherwise, the barrier on my body would have been melted. A man holding a heavy sword rushed in from the rain, flustered and exasperated. Behind the man there were several people. These people all looked a little disheveled. There's something wrong with this rain. One of the men said. You don't have to say that. Who has seen such a powerful rain? It can even break through my barrier. How can it be right? The man running at the front said indifferently. I'm not talking about this. The man slightly frowned. He wanted to say something, but at this time, he noticed that there were other people in the house. The other people noticed the man's gaze, and only then did they notice that there were other people in the house. At this time, everyone had to shut up. The few of them found an empty corner, casually used magic to clean up, and sat together. After sitting down, no one spoke again. Mojiafri didn't care about these people. This place didn't belong to them, and they didn't have the right to not let others in to take shelter from the rain. He only needed to look after his own team. What the others wanted to do had nothing to do with him. Less than 2 minutes after this group of people came in, another group of people drenched in the rain rushed in. Irene noticed these people the moment they rushed in. It was actually the male lead and the others. Zicheng. Obviously, Caesar also noticed the female lead at the first moment. Irene touched her chin. She looked at the reincarnated man, Xiazhua, whose expression didn't change, but whose eyes flashed with a trace of uneasiness. See, your brother may soon become the female lead's puppet. Are you sure you can stop it? I can only try. Xiazhua responded with his eyes. He really wanted his brother to repent and be saved. He wanted to forget about Zicheng and treat his fiancée well. Unfortunately, his brother was very stubborn. If he insisted on stopping it, he was afraid that it would backfire. So he could only take one step at a time. Chapter 480. No one noticed the exchange of glances between the two of them. This short exchange was completed in an instant. Caesar. Zicheng didn't expect to see this man whom she had a good impression of in this place. There were many men who liked her, but not many of them were worthy of her attention. Caesar was definitely one of them. Zicheng was very happy to see the man she liked in this place. What a coincidence. You're here too. Caesar walked forward. Yes, what a coincidence. Zicheng smiled. Miss Zicheng, nice to meet you. Shozo walked forward and greeted her warmly. If Shozo could be happy to see Zicheng, she would write her name backwards. Irene complained in her heart. Hello, Master Shozo. Zicheng greeted Shozo in a friendly manner. Zicheng had her suspicions about Xiazhua. From the favorability system, Xiazhua's favorability towards her was actually 0. She had never seen such a low favorability rating from anyone. She thought that she had never provoked Shozo, so why did he hate her so much? She did not know what the problem was. Perhaps the answer was related to Caesar. She would find a chance to ask Caesar. Zicheng secretly decided that she wanted to know the reason why Shozo hated her. Zicheng wanted to know. Xiaocheng, who are these people? Caesar turned around and looked at Mingxi and the others. Every one of them had an extraordinary aura. They did not look like ordinary adventurers. Many guesses flashed through Caesar's mind about their identities. These are my classmates and seniors. I heard that there was a treasure in the desert wasteland, so I followed my seniors to see it. She could not say anything about the mission. Even if Zicheng had a good impression of Caesar, it was impossible for him to tell Caesar everything the moment he saw him. Besides, this was a secret mission of the school. Other than the mission executors and a few teachers, no one else knew about the mission. Zicheng could not tell Caesar about such a secret mission in front of so many people. She was not an idiot. Then our goal is more or less the same. Caesar and the others must have come here for that thing as well. Unlike others who didn't know what would happen this time, big families like Caesar knew something that others didn't. Many great clans knew about the seal on the heart of wood 1,000 years ago. This time, the seal had expired, and the heart of wood had reappeared in the world. Many large families were determined to obtain the heart of wood. Possessing the heart of wood was equivalent to possessing a future warlock saint, or even a warlock god. No matter which family it was impossible for them to let such a good thing fall into the hands of others. Fengwu. Only then did Xiazhua realize that Fengwu was also here. Ever since they parted ways in the sea god's tomb, the two of them hadn't met again. Speaking of which, he still hadn't repaid the debt of gratitude that Fengwu had saved his life. Xiazhua. Fengwu tilted her head and looked at Xiazhua in confusion. You've become stronger. Fengwu praised Xiazhua after looking at him for a few seconds. What's with that gratified look on your face? Young lady, do you think you're my elder? Xiazhua was slightly embarrassed. He hadn't seen this young lady for a while, but she was still the same. Why was she unhappy? She clearly loved it when her master praised her every time she improved. Didn't he like to praise himself? Fengwu was a little disappointed and lowered her eyes unhappily. Thank you. You've become stronger too. Seeing that Fengwu was unhappy, he didn't dare to remain silent, and could only take over the conversation. Sure enough, Fengwu's eyes lit up when she heard that. There was no longer any disappointment in her eyes. She was happy to be praised. The Fengwu girl pursed her lips and seemed to be bubbling with happiness. Xiazhua, long time no see. You seem to have improved a lot. Mingxi had seen Xiazhua before. He knew that he was a new friend that Fengwu had made in the sea god's tomb. If it wasn't for Fengwu's protection, this young man might not have survived to the end. After that, he heard some things about Xiazhua. He was a young master who couldn't cultivate. Although he lived a luxurious life in that kind of family, he also had to bear unimaginable pressure. In this world where strength was respected, it was really not easy for this young man to not grow into a dark person. Mingxi, you're here too. Sorry, I didn't notice you just now. Xiazhua said embarrassedly. Just now, his attention was focused on Zicheng and Irene, and he didn't notice who else was around. Later on, he noticed Fengwu and his attention was attracted by Fengwu. Now that Mingxi spoke, he finally noticed that Mingxi was here too. It seemed that he still couldn't remain calm when facing Zicheng. He was still nervous. Although he knew that she wasn't the famous Lord Fozhen on the mainland, he still couldn't remain calm in front of Zicheng. It's okay. Mingxi didn't mind at all. You've improved a lot. I didn't expect you to reach such a level in such a short time. When he first met Xiazhua, he clearly remembered that he was still a young man who didn't know anything and could only rely on others for protection. Now he already had a certain level of strength. It seemed that Xiazhua also had his own opportunities. Mingxi didn't intend to ask about other people's opportunities. Everyone had their own opportunities. As the prince of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, he didn't need to be curious about other people's opportunities. That time in the tomb of the sea god, I had some opportunities. That's why I'm so strong now. Xiazhua didn't plan to elaborate. The heart of water was very important. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. Apart from the important people in the family, even the ordinary members of the family didn't know about the heart of water. Because of the heart of water, he not only had the cultivation talent of a water sorcerer, but his water talent had also mutated into the ice element, which was stronger than water. This was something that Xiazhua didn't expect at first. I see. Mingxi nodded with a smile, but didn't ask any more questions. Caesar had brought more than 10 people with him. They were all experts in the family. Among them were women who adored Caesar and Xiazhua. When these women saw Zicheng and Fengwu, their eyes kept darting like daggers. If looks could kill, Fengwu and Zicheng would have been killed several times over. Young Master Caesar, young Master Xiazhua, we've already tidied up the place. You can go and rest for a while. Two beautiful women walked over. When they spoke, their faces were full of shyness. But when their eyes met Fengwu and Zicheng's, it was as if they were looking at their enemies. Zicheng. Was she being provoked? Fengwu blinked innocently. What was it? Chapter 481. Caesar turned around and frowned slightly. Got it. I'll be there in a bit, Caesar said emotionlessly. The male lead was indeed aloof. Irene thought to herself as she stood behind Fengwu and the others. Young Master Caesar. The two girls still wanted to say something, but when they saw Caesar's impatient gaze, they shut their mouths and secretly hated Fengwu and Zicheng. They left angrily. After the two girls left, Caesar and the others didn't stay for too long. After chatting for a while, they returned to the resting area they had arranged. After a while, another person entered the ancient castle. This person was someone Fengwu and the others knew. The person who came was a chubby merchant. He was dressed in extravagant clothes and didn't hold any weapons in his hands. Behind him were a man and a woman wearing a cloak and a veil. Because the man and woman were covered from head to toe, no one could see their faces clearly. Although they couldn't see their faces clearly, they could feel an indescribable charm from them. Boss Hart. Mingxi didn't expect to meet this person again. The last time they went from Three Leaves Island to Falling Jade Island, they had boarded Boss Hart's ship. Mingxi had some impression of this boss who liked to let people hitch a ride. It's Mingxi and Fengwu. Boss Hart looked over and pretended to be shocked. Then he walked up with a smile. I didn't expect to meet again so soon. Hart chuckled, looking like a nice person. Boss Hart is also interested in rare treasures? This Hart seemed to be just an ordinary merchant. His strength was very ordinary. Seeing him appear in a place like the desert wasteland, Mingxi felt an indescribable sense of strangeness. It just so happened that I was nearby. I heard that some rare treasure was about to be born, so I brought some people here to take a look. I'm a businessman, and the birth of rare treasures is an opportunity for experts like you. To a businessman like me, it's a business opportunity. Since I heard about it, of course I had to come and take a look. Mingxi nodded. Fengwu looked at Boss Hart. Fengwu didn't have any special feelings towards this chubby boss. Actually, other than taking a boat together and drifting on Death Island together, they didn't have any other friendship. Especially when they were on Death Island, all of them were thinking about how to survive, so there was no chance for them to connect. It was no wonder that Fengwu felt unfamiliar with Hart. After chatting with Mingxi for a while, he led the man and woman beside him to a corner of the hall. There, they casually tidied up a place, and then the three of them sat down to rest. The entire hall suddenly fell into silence. Outside the window, the rain was still falling, but no one entered the castle. The sky was filled with thunder and lightning, and the sound of thunder rumbled in the sky. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, and there was no sign of it slowing down at all. It seemed that they wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon. The people who stayed in the castle silently looked out the window, each of them thinking about their own plans. It was dark outside the window. Although it was still daytime, the sun was shining brightly, but it was as dark as night. It was as though the surrounding air had a trace of coldness. It's so cold. Irene couldn't help but mutter. She retrieved a cloak from her interspatial ring and quickly wrapped it around her body. She had already put on the thick cloak, but it was still so cold. Irene exhaled. Her breath was actually foggy. How was this possible? Even the sky wouldn't turn dark so quickly. However, after thinking about it, she understood. Those things had probably already begun to take action. Back when she was reading the novel, she didn't have a clear understanding of this ancient castle. She only saw people disappearing in this ancient castle. Then, the female lead and male lead found an opportunity to escape from the castle. The moment they escaped, they turned around and saw that the ancient castle was filled with people. That scene was written to make people's hair stand on end. It was very frightening. Even in the end, the author didn't explain how this place was formed. He also didn't write that the main character went on a killing spree and destroyed all the spirits. He only wrote how the main character escaped. Because the male and female lead couldn't see the spirits, their abilities weren't very effective against the spirits. If the female lead hadn't used her favor ability to exchange some items from the system store as a life-saving measure, perhaps the male and female lead would have died in this place. From this point, it could be seen how terrifying this place was. Other than the male and female lead, almost everyone else who entered died in this place. More than half of the people who traveled with the female lead Zicheng died. In short, the death rate in this place was very high. Irene thought about how she wasn't the female lead. In this place, she had to follow the female lead to fight for a chance of survival. Of course, the others didn't know what Irene was thinking. The weather suddenly turned cold, and it was so cold that it was abnormal. A sense of unease rose in everyone's hearts. It hadn't been more than 10 minutes since they entered the ancient castle. Everyone had put on thick winter clothes, but even so they still didn't feel warm. The surroundings were getting colder and colder. The furnishings around them seemed to be covered with a thin layer of ice. This place, Yaoyu, did you find anything? Huozhua couldn't help but ask. Although he was a fire magician and wasn't afraid of the cold, he still felt very uncomfortable with the sudden drop in temperature. Yaoyu shook her head. The rain outside is not right. I feel a suffocating evil spirit in the rain. Yaoyu's complexion was very ugly. She didn't expect that the first time she received an important task from the school, she would encounter this kind of situation that even she couldn't handle. The current situation was very dangerous. There might be a big guy hiding in the heavy rain. Moreover, it wasn't a big guy that she couldn't deal with. Although she was already a rare genius among the necromancers, she couldn't deal with just any undead. There were also many powerful existences among the undead. These existences had lived for who knows how long. The soul power in their body was incomparably powerful. It wasn't inferior to many human powerhouses. Yaoyu was very suspicious. They were likely to encounter that kind of existence that they couldn't deal with. As a necromancer who had received an orthodox education, she deeply understood how dangerous the situation was. The surrounding yin qi was so heavy, but she didn't see any spirits. This kind of unknown situation made Yaoyu very uneasy. Rain? But why did the temperature in this room suddenly drop so much? Donald asked in bewilderment. That's right. Could it be that the temperature drop has something to do with the rain? Gent pulled his collar. He felt very cold. Maybe it's because of the rain outside, or maybe it's because of other reasons. Yaoyu said with uncertainty. Mogfelt's complexion was somewhat bad. He was the team leader of this trip. He must ensure the safety of all the team members. Now that the heavy rain outside didn't stop, the temperature in the room was getting lower and lower. He felt somewhat irritated in his heart, as if something was going to happen. Chapter 482. Mo Geoffrey was not the only one who felt uneasy. Almost everyone at the scene felt the same. Xiazhua knew nothing about the situation here. He only knew that Zicheng was recognized as the master of the heart of wood in the desert wasteland. As for the process, he had not heard about it. Even Zicheng's friends did not know about it. Xiazhua wanted to ask Irene. Irene knew more than he did. Perhaps she would know something. Unfortunately, now was not the time to talk. Otherwise, he could ask her about some things. The temperature was still dropping. Many places in the room had already formed a layer of frost. Some people even had some thin ice shards in their hair. If it were not for the magic and do qi protecting their bodies, they would have most likely frozen to death in this place. Wow. Why is this place so cold? I'm freezing to death. As soon as Bao Bao came out of the space ring, his pair of beautiful little wings were almost frozen. He hurriedly flew into Fengwu's arms and began to complain with his little mouth. Xiaowu, I just took a nap. Why are you here already? Look at this place. The murderous aura outside is like rain, and the yin aura inside is like frost. This is a place of extreme yin energy. I don't know how many people have died in this place to become such a dangerous place. Bao Bao shook his head and looked around. He was so cold that he hid in Fengwu's arms, only showing his little head. Bao Bao, you're awake. Irene was a little happy. She knew that this little guy was one of Zicheng's golden fingers, the wise beast. Although this little guy's personality had become a little chinibyu, the wisdom of the wise beast should not have been affected. She knew how much the wise beast in Zicheng's hands had helped her. It could be said that it was one of Zicheng's greatest golden fingers. Now that this little guy was with Fengwu, it should only change its personality. She believed that its mind would not change. Recalling the plot again, she found that the wise beast did not appear at this time in the original work. Perhaps it had not hatched at that time. It was just that they were obviously the same beast, so why was there such a huge difference? The wise beast in Zicheng's hands was very pure. and it had an indescribable attachment to Zicheng. However, this little beast was definitely not pure. On the contrary, it was somewhat Chinibyu. It would often look at others with a Chinibyu expression, as if they were all mortals with fish lips. It made one's hand itch to reach out and give this little brat a good beating. What a brat! Irene didn't know that in the original work, because Bao Bao didn't want to form a contract with her, Zicheng used the system product to erase Bao Bao's original consciousness. Then he used the system product to give birth to a new spiritual intelligence. Because it wasn't a soul at all, of course, its personality would be different. The spiritual intelligence that was born from the items in the system store was naturally very attached to Zicheng, the owner of the system. As a baby with spiritual intelligence, it was the smartest beast among all the mythological beasts on its body. It had its own natural pride, so naturally, it was impossible for it to flatter and curry favor with any human. Well, Bao Bao just woke up. Bao Bao rolled its eyes. Great, Bao Bao, do you know where this place is? Why is it like this? How can we leave here? As the smartest mythological beast in the world, the wise beast should know these things. He should know. Bao Bao's eyes flashed with a touch of light. This human seemed to know its identity. Who was this guy? How did he know who it was? Zicheng looked at Irene in confusion. It seemed that he didn't understand why she would ask a magical beast. Zicheng had missed the opportunity to get the wise beast, so he didn't know anything about Bao Bao's identity. Interesting, why would there be 3 people with the same time and space rules in this world? What was the relationship between these 3 people? Why would they all appear in this time and space? Even its current owner, Fengwu, had some time and space rules. Including Fengwu, there were 4 people. It was too strange. Didn't the world's consciousness care about it? Irene didn't expect that not only did she know Bao Bao's true identity, but she also almost lost her identity as a time traveler in front of Bao Bao. Bao Bao doesn't know. Bao Bao rolled his eyes, buried his head in Fengwu's arms, and said righteously, "Don't know. I'd be a fool if I believed you." Although she didn't know why Bao Bao didn't say anything, she had already made up her mind. If something really happened, she must follow the female lead and Fengwu. The female lead was protected by the female lead's immortal aura. Following the female lead might give her a chance of survival. And Fengwu, as the owner of the wise beast, would definitely be protected by it. Following Fengwu might also give her a chance of survival. Irene's little abacus rang loudly in her heart. At this time, Zicheng, as the female lead, also felt that the atmosphere around them was very bad. Bao Bao had just said that this was the land of extreme negative energy. She also heard it. Although she didn't know what kind of magical beast it was, she thought it should be very extraordinary. Zicheng even had a feeling that this unknown magical beast belonged to her. She didn't know why she had such a feeling, but when she saw this magical beast, she felt that it was hers. It should be hers. This feeling appeared unknowingly, and it kept echoing in her mind. Unconsciously, she felt that Fengwu was a little unpleasant to the eye. Why did Fengwu contract with so many magical beasts? Why on earth? The more she thought about it, the more she felt that Fengwu had robbed her of her opportunity. She hated it in her heart, but she didn't show it at all. However, Fengwu suddenly felt strange. She turned her head to look in a certain direction, but she saw Zicheng's gentle smile. There was nothing in that direction. Fengwu suspiciously turned her head back, but didn't say anything. However, Zicheng thought that Fengwu felt the malice in her heart. At the same time, she secretly restrained her mind. Bao Bao, can you tell me what the land of extreme negative energy is? Ming-Shi used his finger to press Bao Bao's little head. Since you asked so sincerely, this Bao Bao will be merciful and tell you. You think you're the rocket team. Irene ridiculed in her heart. The so-called land of extreme negative energy is divided into innate and acquired. The innate land of extreme negative energy is very difficult to find. It naturally gathers evil things, and is a paradise for all spirit cultivators. The acquired land of extreme negative energy is because of the strong yin qi and evil qi lingering in a certain place. Over the years, that place will be polluted by the 2 kinds of yin qi, and thus become the acquired land of extreme negative energy. The acquired land of extreme negative energy can also attract all kinds of evil things that like yin qi. Moreover, these things are very aggressive. Once a human mistakenly enters the land of extreme negative energy, it will be a 90% death. Chapter 483. Bao Bao explained in detail the reason for the formation of the land of extreme negative energy, and the difference between innate and acquired. Ming Shi and the others then knew what kind of place they had mistakenly entered. When Yao Yu heard Bao Bao's explanation of the land of extreme yin, her expression changed. She tried to recall the magical beast catalog in her mind, but she couldn't recall anything. In her mind, there was no magical beast that looked like this and had such a deep understanding of the undead world. Then according to what you said, those places where people died will become the land of extreme negative energy? Donald asked with interest. Tisk, stupid mortals. The formation of the land of extreme negative energy requires the right time, right place and right people. If the death of a few people can create a land of extreme negative energy, then this world would have long been occupied by the undead. Bao Bao rolled his eyes and sighed again at the low intelligence of humans. Sure enough, a genius like Bao Bao is hard to find even in 10,000 years. Bao Bao thought proudly. Senior Yao Yu, is what this little thing said true? Donald asked. Yao Yu nodded. Yes, it's exactly like what it said. The others around them naturally heard this conversation. For a moment, everyone's mood was a little heavy, and the vigilance in their hearts deepened. Then what should we do now? When will this rain stop? We can't stay here forever. Goth said with some annoyance. That rain is not something that ordinary people can touch. If we rush out, it's very likely that the evil spirit in the rain will invade our minds. At that time, we will be dominated by the killing intent in our hearts. Yao Yu said seriously. In short, if they rushed in, they might lose their minds, and maybe become a madman. When the temperature in the room dropped to a certain point, it didn't continue to drop. Even so, this cold room was still cold enough to make people shiver. It seems that we can't leave before the rain stops. Irene shrugged. It was the same in the original work, but at that time, there was no Yao Yu the necromancer, and Bao Bao the brain. So there were still some people who didn't believe in evil, and wanted to rush out in the rain. Anyway, the people who rushed out in the end didn't leave alive. They all died in the heavy rain outside. The rain outside the window was still so dense that it was impossible to see what was going on outside. All they could hear was the sound of thunder and rain, and the flash of lightning across the sky. The sound of the endless thunderstorm frustrated everyone. After confirming that they could not leave, the other groups of people also came over. Mogfiel greeted them, and asked more about the land of extreme negative energy. Although Yao Yu's temper wasn't very good, she didn't make enemies everywhere. When others came to show her goodwill, she didn't deliberately put on airs. Although her attitude wasn't very friendly, she wouldn't offend anyone. Time ticked by, but the rain didn't seem to stop at all. From the moment they arrived at this place, it was already night time. They couldn't see the situation outside, so they could only calculate the time by themselves. Time slowly passed, and the people trapped in this place each ate a bit of food. In the middle of the night, a scream suddenly pierced through the sky. Fengwu woke up from her sleep in a daze. At the same time, other people who were not on night watch also woke up. What's wrong? What happened? Someone asked nervously. It's the middle of the night. This was a voice that wasn't very happy about being disturbed. What's going on? The person who asked was Caesar. Caesar didn't bring many people, but his team had the largest number of people. The one who screamed just now was one of the two girls who went to Zicheng to call Caesar and Shozo. Young Master Caesar, bad news. Regina is dead. Quickly go and take a look. The girl said in a panic. Lead the way, Caesar said immediately as his aura changed. The girl hurriedly nodded and led Caesar and Shozo to the place where Regina died. Regina died in a small kitchen not far from the hall. The girl who first found Regina's body explained how she found the body. The girl said that Regina felt that a good friend had come to visit, so she had to find a place to clean herself up. She was surrounded by men, so of course, Regina couldn't tell them this, so she told the girl who found the body. If Regina wanted to clean herself up, She had to find a place where there was no one around. However, Caesar said that something was wrong in the house, and that there might be something dangerous. He asked everyone to stay together and not wander around. The two girls didn't plan to go too far, so after looking around the hall, they finally found a small kitchen. Regina went to clean herself up while the other girls stood guard outside. They thought that there wouldn't be any danger. If something happened inside, the people outside would hear immediately. However, they didn't expect that when danger happened, there wouldn't be a chance to call for help every time. The girl who accompanied Regina waited outside for more than 10 minutes, but Regina didn't come out. She knocked on the door a few times, but no one answered. She immediately felt that something was wrong. After opening the door with magic, she saw a cold body with a pale face. She screamed and ran to find Caesar, who then went to the kitchen with her. The girl screamed so loudly that everyone was alerted. Magafree sent 2 people to check out the situation, and he went to the scene himself. Mingxi and Fengwu also went with him. Regina died too tragically. Sob sob. Who killed her? The girl who had survived cried sadly. One of them was in love with young Master Caesar, while the other was interested in young Master Shozo. There was no conflict of interest between them, so their relationship had always been good. Who would have thought that Regina would lose her life just because of a training trip? Juani, did you see anything when you came in? Shozo looked around carefully. Other than the window being open and the area near the window being wet from the rain, there was nothing out of the ordinary. The rain outside had strong energy and murderous aura. A human couldn't have come in through the window to kill someone. So what killed Juani was interesting. Rue, go check on Regina's cause of death. The body in front of them didn't seem to have any obvious injuries. Even her clothes were not messy. Regina's face was very calm. It was because she was so calm that it made people feel a chill from the bottom of their hearts. The one called Rue was obviously Caesar's trusted aide. Rue was young, only in his 20s. One look and one could tell that he was talented. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caught Caesar's attention. Chapter 484. Irene was shocked as she followed behind. What was going on? Why was it different from the original novel? The original novel did not have such a scene. Although there were people around the male lead who died, the first one to die was not this girl called Regina. Moreover, the way she died was different from the original novel. Irene came alone. Mojiaffre only brought Mingxi and Fengwu and did not bring Irene. Irene was curious and secretly followed them. Lui walked over and carefully examined Regina's body. Not long after, Lui reported the results of the examination without a change in expression. All the blood on Regina's body is gone. Also, on her neck, we found 2 small holes. This way of death is similar to those who were sucked dry by the blood breeds. Lui said. Blood breeds. Caesar did not expect Regina's death to be related to the blood breeds. But why would there be blood breeds in this place? Shozo was also in disbelief. Didn't they say they met a spirit? How did it turn out to be blood breeds? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Blood breeds. They were monsters who killed without blinking and fed on human blood. But why would these monsters come to the desert wasteland? The blood breeds were known to be afraid of sunlight. With such a strong sun, were they not afraid of being burned to ashes? This is only one possibility. It could be something else that caused Regina's death. Whether it was the blood breeds or not, we cannot be sure. Lui said. Caesar nodded, satisfied with Lu Yi's performance. No one could tell whether it was the blood breeds or not. Regina's death cast a shadow over everyone's heart. No one would be able to sleep tonight. Captain, do you think it was the blood breeds who did it? Erin went up to him. She wasn't afraid of this cold-faced captain at all. After all, there was an even colder guy in the team. When the 2 icebergs met, Skycliff didn't disappoint. With a comparison, the captain's cold face was not so unbearable. Mojiaffre calmly glanced at Irene. The others in the team were also waiting for Mojiaffre to tell them what had happened. They only knew that someone had died, and it was someone from Caesar's side. They had no idea how they died, or what the culprit was. After Mingxi and the other 2, as well as Irene, who had secretly followed them, returned, Zicheng and the others were very curious about what had happened. Zicheng wanted to go to Caesar and ask what happened, but it was obviously not the right time. Caesar's atmosphere was not good because of the death of a person. It was not wise to go now. Therefore, Zicheng chose to inquire about the situation from the others in the team. Yao Yu was also very curious. She looked at Mog Philip with the others. Mo Geoffrey briefly explained what had happened. When they heard that the girl might have died in the hands of the vampires, they were stunned. The desert wasteland wasn't a place where vampires could stay. Although the temperature here was very low at night, it was terrifyingly hot during the day. Vampires were so afraid of sunlight, so how could they appear in this place? It was definitely not done by vampires. This was too inconceivable. Except for Skycliff, the guy who didn't care about anything, the others began to discuss the topic of whether the murderer was of vampires or not. Bao Bao yawned and lay on Fengwu's chest. A pair of bright eyes occasionally glanced at the position where Boss Hart and the others were. Just like what they said, it was very inconceivable for vampires to appear here, but it was not absolutely impossible. Now there were two vampires here. No matter what those two wanted to do, if they dared to have any ideas about Xiaowu, they would be destroyed. Bao Bao waved his little fist in his heart, and then fell on Fengwu's chest, snoring happily. Fengwu didn't know that her Rue beast had seen through someone's disguise, but she didn't say anything. Bao Bao wasn't a beast with a good temper. He only cared about the people in his heart. As for others, Bao Bao wouldn't be so kind to guide them. Of course, he could make an exception when he was in a good mood. Senior Yao Yu, do you think there's something evil here? That Regina person might have been killed by one of those things, Donald guessed. However, the more he said, the more he felt that what he said made sense. I haven't seen the body, so I can't be sure, Yao Yu said, shaking her head. There was a certain difference between those killed by spirits and those killed by vampires. The aura of vampires was also different from spirits. She could only tell when she saw the body. Do you want to go take a look now? Huozhua looked up and asked. Sure. Yao Yu's words weren't so annoying when she wasn't being willful. Mo Geoffrey nodded and brought Yao Yu to see the body. Soon, they came back from looking at the body and confirmed that Regina's death had nothing to do with spirits. Regina's body didn't have the aura of a vengeful spirit. She couldn't even find Regina's soul. Yao Yu suspected that Regina's soul had been killed. Otherwise, as a new life, she couldn't have missed it. Regina's death was like a signal. Once someone was alone, they would die. However, their deaths were obviously different from Regina's. They were all frozen to death. Yes, as magicians and swordmasters, they could actually freeze to death. The fact that they were able to enter the desert proved that they weren't weak. They had combat aura and magic to protect their bodies. Even if their bodies weren't completely unaffected, they wouldn't freeze to death. After looking at the bodies, Yao Yu said that they were all killed by Yin Qi. The reason why their bodies were covered in frost and looked like they were frozen to death was because there was a large amount of Yin Qi in their bodies. That was why they died like this. Although people kept dying, they didn't find any traces of spirit bodies. The rain outside the window showed no signs of stopping. The thick dark clouds seemed to be pressing down on everyone's hearts, making them feel depressed. They had been trapped in this place for 2 days. In these 2 days, people were dying every day. The ones who died the most were the 2 teams that entered this place. This team was the only one that didn't have any relationship with Mingxi's team. Other than that, many of the people that Caesar brought with him also died. Only Mingxi's team and Boss Hart's team didn't suffer any losses. However, Mingxi's team's good luck only lasted for the first 2 days. On the 3rd day, Mingxi's team finally lost a person. This person was Gent. Gent suddenly fell to the ground and became a frozen corpse. He died in front of everyone without any warning. Chapter 485. This was the first time a teammate had died in front of them. Everyone's expression was solemn, and the surrounding atmosphere was suffocating. I want to leave this damned place. I don't want to die here. I don't want to die here. A man shouted emotionally. Another man rushed into the rain. The man's teammates wanted to call him back, but unfortunately, they didn't get any response. I'll go look for him. Another person rushed into the rain. The two men waited for a long time, but they didn't see anyone come back. If they hadn't already left this place of extreme negative energy, then the biggest possibility was that both of them had died in the rain outside. One of their team members suggested to go look for them, but no one agreed to this idea. Now, it was obvious that the people who rushed out were most likely dead. They're dead, the team leader said with a pained expression. Each of their brothers had left a trace of essence blood on him, and through this trace of essence blood, they could determine whether the other person was dead or alive. Now, the essence blood that the two of them left on him had completely dissipated. This proved that the two who rushed out no longer had any trace of life. Originally, they wanted to learn from the two who rushed out of the rain to leave this place, but after hearing that the two of them were dead, they gave up on this idea. Who would rush out when they knew that they were going to die? It wasn't like they were looking for death. People kept dying in the house, but outside the house, it was raining heavily. Moreover, this rain carried with it a fatal evil aura. If they couldn't find a way to leave, maybe everyone would die here. The hall was filled with an aura of despair. This ancient castle was like an island in the sea. They couldn't leave, and could only watch as the island slowly sank. Junt's death was a huge blow to Fengwu and the others. After Junt died, his soul was like the others. It didn't appear at all, and there wasn't a single soul in the surroundings. Yao Yu's back was covered in cold sweat. To be able to kill so many people in front of her, it could only prove that the soul that killed the people was of a very high level. Moreover, it was many times stronger than her. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to not see anything. Facing such a soul with unknown strength, you couldn't see its appearance, but it was able to kill so many people here without anyone noticing. Yao Yu really couldn't stay calm. Mog Philip took a deep breath and put away Gin's corpse. His mood became heavier and heavier. There were members dying in front of him, but he was powerless to do anything. This feeling made Mog Philip's mood very bad. Captain Mo Geoffrey, Mr. Hart, Captain Jiao, I don't think we can continue like this. If we want to leave this place alive, we need to gather everyone's strength and find a way to survive, Kaiser said with a serious face. Although these people stayed under the same roof, they were not united. They had always been doing their own dirty work. However, the current situation did not allow them to continue like this. Caesar had no choice but to stand up and call for everyone to unite. Mog Philip, Hart, and Captain Jiao were all silent. In the end, the three of them agreed with Caesar. They could not take care of their own people now. If they did not work together, it was very likely that none of them would be able to escape in the end. Young Master Caesar, what do you think? Jiao was the leader of the second team that had entered this place. Their team's strength was not weak. Even if they were weak, they would not be able to reach this place. Although they had not interacted much in the past 2 days, they already had a certain understanding of each other's identity. For example, Mo Geoffrey. Jiao knew that everyone in Mo Geoffrey's team was from the Notre Dame du Starlight to gain experience. As for Hart, he was a merchant who came to look for treasures. He wanted to find a treasure that could be sold for a good price outside. He also knew that Caesar was the young master of a large family. He did not know how large his family's power was, but to be able to have such a grandeur and extravagance, it was definitely not a small family. Jiao knew that these large families had their own inheritances. He hoped that this young master Caesar would know some useful information. This would be very helpful for them to leave this place. However, he also knew that the possibility of this idea being realized was not very high. As expected, Caesar did not know much about this place. Just like them, he only knew that this place was a place of extreme negative energy. He did not know anything else. Although they were disappointed, Caesar's idea had gained everyone's approval. Instead of waiting here to be killed one by this unknown thing, it would be better to find that thing and then kill it together. Originally, the possibility of this idea being realized was very small. Fortunately, there was a ready-made necromancer on the scene. With the necromancer's help, the success rate of Caesar's idea increased by a lot. Originally, if there was no necromancer, even if the evil spirit was standing there, they would not be able to see it. However, with a necromancer, it was different. A necromancer could see things that ordinary people could not. Although Yao Yu said that she did not see anything, there were many reasons why she could not see anything. It could also be that the evil spirit was too good at hiding. As long as they could find the evil spirit, and then gather everyone's strength to kill it, they might be able to leave this place. In short, Caesar's idea had gained everyone's approval. Even Yao Yu agreed to try her best to help everyone find the evil spirit. Why was it so certain that this was done by the evil spirit? This was also Yao Yu's judgment. Yao Yu was very sure that the evil spirit that killed these people was not a human or a magical beast. It could only be an undead spirit. Moreover, it was an undead spirit with great resentment. Only with great resentment could it produce so much yin qi and freeze these people to death. No one had any objection to this statement. After all, there were professionals here. They were willing to listen to the opinions of professionals. Moreover, these people died so strangely. It was not impossible to say that the murderer was an undead spirit. For the first time, the four parties sat together for a meeting. During this time, because of Yao Yu's identity as a necromancer, she was treated with respect by the other three parties. Fortunately, Yao Yu did not show any displeasure to these people because of this. At least in front of outsiders, she still cared about her image. After making up her mind to strike first to gain the upper hand, Yao Yu followed these people to find the whereabouts of the undead spirit. This ancient castle was very big. There were many rooms upstairs. They searched one room after another. After searching for a long time, they did not find anything. Now all the rooms they were in were one of the rooms on the third floor. This room was somewhat different. Why was it different? Because this was a room full of childlike charm. This room was full of dolls. In the wardrobe, there was a cute princess dress. Chapter 486. The room they were in now was one of the rooms on the third floor. This room was a little different. Why was it different? Because this was a room filled with childlike charm. This room was filled with dolls, and there was even a cute princess dress hanging in the wardrobe. Although the room was no longer clean, and the princess dress was no longer the same as before, these dolls, perhaps because of the materials used to make them, looked a little dirty, but they were still well preserved. The dolls were not damaged at all. This doll is so cute. Girls liked this kind of doll, and Xianni was no exception. After seeing the pile of cute dolls, Xianni picked up one of the dolls and carefully used a cleaning spell to remove the dust on the doll. This was a blonde princess doll. The little princess doll was wearing a beautiful fluffy skirt, and a pair of blue eyes looked at people without blinking. It was a very beautiful and cute doll. Zicheng and Irene were not very interested in these dolls. They had long passed the age of playing with dolls. Although the two of them had different personalities, they were only interested in things that could improve their strength. They had no interest in these dolls that little girls played with. Yao Yu was also very interested in these dolls. It was not that she was still a child, but there was actually an extremely rare doll among these dolls. This rare doll's skin texture was very similar to a real person's, and its facial features were exquisite and beautiful. It was very popular among noble girls. More than 1,000 years ago, there was a period of time in Heavenly Wind Continent when these realistic dolls were very popular. Unfortunately, the only person who knew how to make these dolls had passed away before the skill was passed down to the next generation. This kind of rare anti-reality doll became extinct. Although many people had researched how to make these dolls, no one could make them successfully. Since then, these anti-reality dolls had been sold at a sky-high price. Every time these dolls appeared, whether it was noble ladies or royal princesses, they would all join in the fight for these anti-reality dolls. Now, in this dilapidated castle that had existed for who knows how many years, there were actually a few of these rare anti-reality dolls. Yao Yu could not believe her eyes. Because there were not many of these dolls left in the world, she had only seen them once in an auction. Later, it was bought by a royal prince and given to his daughter who had just turned 5. If these dolls were sold outside, they would definitely be able to sell for a large sum of money. Although Yao Yu was born in a noble family, it didn't mean that she would treat money like dirt. On the contrary, it was very inconvenient for her family to use money. In addition to the monthly allowance given by the family, if he wanted more, he had to find ways to earn it himself. The family's resources could not be tilted towards only one person. Now that she suddenly saw so many rare dolls in the outside world, Yao Yu immediately had an idea. She didn't feel any bad aura from these dolls, so there shouldn't be any evil spirits possessing them. As long as she could sell these dolls, she wouldn't have to worry about her future cultivation resources. Thinking of this, Yao Yu's eyes revealed a trace of joy. Another person also noticed the value of these dolls. She originally wanted to use the excuse that she liked dolls to take all of these dolls away. But after seeing Yao Yu's performance, she knew that it was impossible for her to take all the benefits for herself. It was obvious that someone had recognized the value of this doll. In fact, it wasn't just the two girls who recognized the doll. Mingxi also recognized the value of the doll, but he didn't say anything. These dolls were very precious to others, but to Mingxi they were nothing. He was the future emperor of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. What kind of treasure couldn't he not have? How could he cherish these dolls with two girls? Fengwu recognized the doll as well. It was one of those dolls that had been made with a lost technique. Thinking that this was a lost art, she walked up with interest and picked up one of the dolls to take a look. Unexpectedly, when Fengwu's hand reached out, it was slapped away by Xianni, who was not far from her. "Don't touch it, this is mine." Xianni didn't like Fengwu to begin with, who asked her to have a good relationship with Xiazhua. As the daughter of the main branch, Xianni had always paid attention to the two young masters of the main branch. Caesar's talent was too high, and it was impossible for her, a member of the main branch, to marry Caesar, a young master who would definitely become the head of the family in the future. Xiazhua, on the other hand, had suddenly become a genius from trash. Xiazhua couldn't become the head of the family in the future, and his talent was unparalleled. Naturally, Xianni wanted to suck up to him. Unfortunately, Xiazhua, who had been reborn, had seen through many things. He didn't care about Xianni's efforts to please him. After realizing that she couldn't please Xiazhua, Xianni thought that it was because Xiazhua wanted to become stronger and didn't care about love and relationships. Although Xiazhua didn't accept her, he didn't accept anyone else either. This made Xianni unable to completely give up. But after coming here, she realized that Xiazhua treated Fengwu differently. When he looked at her, his smile was very sincere. This smile was different from the polite and distant smile he gave to the others. Xianni had been unhappy with Fengwu for a long time. She hadn't been able to find a chance to teach her a lesson. Now that the opportunity was in front of her, Xianni wouldn't let it go. Fengwu had always been a sensitive girl. She was very sensitive to the likes and dislikes of others. Fengwu clearly sensed the hidden malice in Xianni's eyes. Although she sensed it, Fengwu's large eyes were filled with confusion. She didn't understand why Xianni's eyes were filled with such deep malice. This person was so strange. Fengwu's method of dealing with things she couldn't understand was to ignore them. Thus, Fengwu didn't care about what Xianni said. She picked up a doll and stared at it. "Stop, I said, it's mine. Don't you understand?" Xianni saw that Fengwu was ignoring her. She was so angry that she slapped Fengwu's hand. Fengwu reacted quickly and dodged to the side. Xianni didn't hit Fengwu. Instead, she hit Zicheng, who was standing beside Fengwu. The slap landed on Zicheng's shoulder. Zicheng felt a burst of pain. "Little Cheng." Caesar saw that Zicheng was hit and walked over with concern. Zicheng frowned slightly, then his brows relaxed. Although it hurt, he wasn't injured. At most, his shoulder would be slightly swollen. This Xianni was too ruthless. Zicheng was secretly dissatisfied. This dissatisfaction wasn't only towards Xianni, but also towards Fengwu. If Fengwu hadn't dodged, she wouldn't have been hit. Chapter 487. Although he was complaining in his heart, Zicheng didn't show the slightest dissatisfaction on his face. She gave Caesar a look that said she was fine, and didn't say anything else, nor did she pursue Xianni's fault. Seeing that she was fine, Caesar let out a sigh of relief, but then he was dissatisfied with Xianni. "Xianni, what are you doing?" Caesar looked at Xianni with an unpleasant expression, his eyes filled with obvious dissatisfaction. Xianni's expression changed. She wanted to deal with Fengwu, and she didn't have any hostility towards Zicheng, who was obviously favored by Caesar. "Young Master Caesar, You can't blame me. She touched my things, and I just wanted to teach her a lesson. Who knew that this girl would be so cunning? And that's why Miss Zicheng was implicated. Xianni looked at Fengwu with a displeased expression, and pointed a finger in Fengwu's direction, as if she was afraid that others didn't know who she was talking about. What in this room belongs to you? Why don't you tell us? I didn't know that there was something that belonged to you in this castle that had been abandoned for so long. You're so shameless. Why don't you say that you lived here in your previous life, and that all the treasures in this castle are private property that you didn't bring into the grave in your previous life? If you say that, who can argue with you? Irene said sarcastically. What do you mean? Xianni was so angry that her face turned red, and she glared at Irene, cursing Irene's 8 generations of ancestors in her heart. What do you mean? I saw everything just now. You're twisting the truth. Irene glared back fearlessly. I'm not twisting the truth, this is her fault. If she hadn't dodged, would I have hit Zicheng? The more Xianni thought about it, the more she felt that she was wrong, and the more she felt that she had been wronged. Caesar looked at the quarreling 2 people in front of him with an unpleasant expression, and he secretly regretted bringing Xianni along. If he had known that she was such a troublemaker, he wouldn't have agreed to bring her along. However, it was too late for regrets now. He had to protect his own people. Enough, both of you are in the wrong. Apologize to Zicheng together. Caesar looked at Xianni, then at Fengwu, and said expressionlessly. As soon as he said that, the members of Fengwu's team looked at Caesar with a subtle expression. Fengwu wasn't on their side. What right did he have to make her apologize? Anyone with eyes could see that it wasn't Fengwu's fault that Zicheng had been hit by Xianni. Even if he wanted to find the culprit, he shouldn't have involved Fengwu. Caesar realized that he had said something wrong. He could order Xianni to apologize, but he couldn't order Fengwu, because Fengwu wasn't his woman. However, the words had already been spoken and could not be taken back. It was already impossible for him to change his mind. Did I do something wrong? Fengwu blinked, trying to recall what she had just done. She didn't think she had done anything wrong. How strange. She clearly hadn't done anything wrong. Why would this person want her to apologize to Zicheng? It's your fault for dodging. Zicheng was dragged into this because of you. Of course you should apologize. Xianni said matter-of-factly. Why can't I dodge? Fengwu's eyes were full of confusion. It's because you dodged that Zicheng was hit by me. It's all your fault. Xianni said matter-of-factly. You hit him, not me. You guys are so weird. Fengwu said seriously, and walked back to Mingxi with the doll in her arms, ignoring these people. Fengwu couldn't understand Xianni's thoughts, and didn't intend to. I didn't do anything wrong. Fengwu looked at Mingxi seriously when she returned to Mingxi's side. She pursed her lips. You're right. It's not your fault. You don't have to apologize for someone who has nothing to do with you. Mingxi patted Fengwu's little head. There was a gentleness in his eyes that even he didn't notice. Fengwu girl was satisfied. The corners of her mouth curled up, and a trace of satisfaction appeared in her black gem-like eyes. After receiving Mingxi's affirmation, Fengwu began to carefully examine the doll in her hands. Her large eyes flashed with a trace of confusion, but no one noticed. Fengwu walked back to Mingxi's side. Originally, Xianni wanted to rush over and cause trouble, but Caesar didn't have the intention to continue. Moreover, Zicheng obviously didn't want him to implicate Fengwu. Thinking that Zicheng and Fengwu were now members of the same team, if he embarrassed their team today, Zicheng's teammates would make things difficult for him in the future. For Zicheng's sake, he didn't plan to catch Fengwu and apologize again. Are you done yet? We're here to do business, not here to watch you guys settle personal grudges. Don't touch anything in this room. Put all these dolls back. Yao Yu said with an unkind expression. Yet you women are so troublesome. We're here to find that evil spirit, not to watch you guys fight. You're not done yet. Someone couldn't help but mutter. Zicheng's little face reddened when he saw the dissatisfied looks of others. He awkwardly apologized to everyone, hurriedly expressed his forgiveness to Xianni, and returned to his team. You're still thinking about attracting attention at a time like this. Yao Yu said unhappily to Zicheng. Then, she ignored Zicheng and turned her head to look to the side. Fengwu didn't care about the noise around her. She was fully focused on the doll. The doll gave her a very dangerous feeling, and there was a smell on the doll that she didn't like. It was like the smell of something rotten. This doll isn't anything good. You better put it back. Bao Bao sat on Fengwu's shoulder and whispered in her ear. What's wrong? Fengwu turned to look at Bao Bao. This thing is smelly and dirty. Bao Bao doesn't like it. Bao Bao sat on Fengwu's shoulder and gently swung his little legs. I don't like it either. It smells bad. Fengwu nodded and put the doll back where it was. Let's go. Let's look elsewhere. Yao Yu checked everywhere in the house, but she didn't find anything suspicious. Everyone had to leave the room and look elsewhere. However, after searching the entire house, he still could not find anything that was suspected to be an evil spirit. Everyone was disappointed. After finding nothing, they returned to the hall on the first floor. In order to search every room, they spent a lot of time. Everyone was tired. Each team arranged for someone to guard the room, and the others sat in the hall to rest. Xianni saw that everyone was resting, and then she took out the rare antique doll she found. The doll was very valuable, and she didn't want to give it up. Although Yao Yu said not to touch the things in the rooms, she only took the doll. It shouldn't be a problem. And Yao Yu looked like a useless person. If she was, she wouldn't have been unable to catch an evil spirit. Chapter 488. Seeing that everyone was resting, Xianni took out the rare antique doll she found. This doll was extremely valuable, and she didn't want to give it up no matter what. Although Yao Yu said not to touch the things in the rooms, it shouldn't be a problem if she only took one doll. Moreover, Yao Yu looked like a useless person. If she was capable, she wouldn't have been unable to catch an evil spirit. Xianni thought with disdain. She took out the doll and played with it in her hands. It felt like real skin, and Xianni loved it so much that she couldn't put it down. Xianni, you are too bold. Didn't I say not to touch the things upstairs? How dare you bring this doll down? A man who was friends with Xianni said in surprise when he saw the doll in Xianni's hands. What's there to be afraid of? Didn't I say that there's nothing wrong with this doll? Nothing will happen even if I touch it. Xianni waved her hands indifferently. Aren't you afraid of being found out by young Master Caesar? He said not to touch anything upstairs. The man reminded her kindly. Don't be afraid. Young Master Caesar won't really get angry over a doll. At most, I'll just apologize when young Master finds out. In order to bring this extremely valuable doll out, even if young Master Caesar scolded her, she would accept it. All right, do whatever you want. Don't ask me to plead for you when young Master Caesar punishes you. The man saw that Xianni didn't care about his warning, so he didn't bother to say more. I know. Go guard the room and don't disturb me. Xianni waved her hands impatiently. The man could only sigh and walk away. The two of them spoke very softly, so they didn't attract much attention. Erin, on the other hand, happened to see Xianni take out the doll, but she didn't want to be nosy. In the original book, there was no record of these dolls. She naturally thought that these dolls shouldn't have any problems, so she just glanced at them and didn't care anymore. Using the rest time, Irene tried her best to recall the original story. She found out that the reason why Zicheng was able to escape was because she bought a boundary-breaking talisman from the system store and broke through the barrier of the land of extreme negative energy. Unbeknownst to them, the rain outside had already formed a barrier. It was impossible for them to leave unless they had a rare talisman like Zicheng. It was also mentioned in the original work that the boundary-breaking talisman required a lot of favorable impression points. In order to break the barrier here, Zicheng had spent most of her fortune. This was also the reason why Zicheng didn't use the boundary-breaking talisman from the beginning. It took a lot of effort for Zicheng to save up so many points. Unless it was absolutely necessary, she wouldn't be willing to use them. It seemed that if he wanted to escape, he could only rely on Zicheng's breaking boundary talisman. Irene sighed. Why wasn't her gold finger a system-type item? It was just a living space. Other than being used to grow things, it wasn't very useful. Compared to Zicheng's gold finger, there was a huge difference. However, she was the female lead. The female lead was the darling of this world. With the protection of the world's consciousness, it was normal for her to have such a powerful gold finger. Because of her bad mood, Irene tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She even wanted to go to the toilet. What should she do? Fengwu, wake up. Fengwu was in a daze when she heard someone calling her. She opened her eyes and saw Irene's smiling face. Do you want to go to the toilet? Irene tugged at Fengwu's sleeve and asked expectantly. Fengwu blinked. Although she wasn't in a hurry, she could still go. Thinking of this, she nodded. That's great. Irene cheered in her heart. It was great that she didn't have to go to the toilet alone. In all ghost stories, the toilet was the most likely place for dirty things to appear. I'll go with you. Yao Yu's voice came. It turned out that she wasn't asleep either. Let's go together. Zicheng also opened his eyes while hugging the thick fur coat. She was a light sleeper and woke up when she heard someone talking. Well, she originally planned to go with only Fengwu, but in the end it became a group of 4. The 4 girls walked towards the back of the house. There was a toilet on every floor of the castle. The toilet on the first floor was at the back. Next to the toilet was a storeroom. They had carefully searched these places today, but they didn't find anything. Because they had searched the whole castle inside and out, they were familiar with the rooms in the castle. There were a few rooms on each floor, and the location of the toilets were also clear. The 4 of them just wanted to go to the back of the hall to relieve themselves. Unexpectedly, they were stopped by someone. The person who stopped them was Xianni. Xianni didn't want to stop them, but there were only a few girls and she couldn't go to the toilet by herself. Even if she didn't want to, she could only accept it. Fengwu didn't have any feelings for Xianni. To her, Xianni was just a stranger. Whether she wanted to go with Fengwu or not, she didn't care. And Zicheng had always been gentle and kind. How could he say anything against Xianni going with them? Irene rolled her eyes. If she knew this would happen, she wouldn't have offended her in the first place. Yao Yu just looked at her impatiently. She didn't say anything. She didn't disagree or agree. Xianni assumed that everyone had no objections. She consciously followed behind Fengwu and didn't cause any trouble at this time. You actually brought this doll out. Yao Yu didn't pay much attention to Xianni until she inadvertently turned her head. Only then did she notice what Xianni was holding in her hands. Wasn't this the doll from the room upstairs? She had told her not to touch the things in the room, but this Xianni took the doll downstairs. Yao Yu had a bad temper, and now she was even more unhappy. She had told her not to touch it, but Xianni didn't listen. She still took the doll downstairs. She didn't care about her at all. I really like this doll. Didn't you say that there's no problem with it? Why can't I take it? Xianni felt that she didn't do anything wrong. This doll was so expensive. It was only left here to collect dust. It wasn't for her to take it out. After selling it, she could find a good new owner for the doll. Since you've decided, I won't say anything. But if you touch the things here, you'll get into trouble. Yao Yu was too lazy to say anything more. As a necromancer, she knew better than anyone that some things couldn't be touched casually. If they did, they might lose their lives. This time it would depend on her luck. If she was lucky, then she would be fine. If she was unlucky, then it would be hard to say. Anyway, she had already warned her. It was Xianni who didn't listen. She couldn't be blamed if something happened. Chapter 489. Because no one used the toilet in the castle, there was an unpleasant stench floating in the air. There was a lot of dust in the surroundings, and there were even many small mosquitoes flying around. This environment was simply disgusting. When the 5 girls saw the toilet, their faces all changed. Fengwu was fine. She just frowned slightly and said in her heart that it was so dirty. The other 4 girls' faces were ugly. If they didn't need to go to the toilet, they would have immediately turned around and left. They had checked the toilets on the several floors above. They were definitely not this dirty. The toilets in the backyard of the first floor were actually specially prepared for the servants, so the environment naturally wouldn't be too good. Although it wasn't the first time they came here, they were still disgusted by the stench. It was too uncomfortable to let them go to such a dirty and smelly place to relieve their needs. It was really too difficult for them. Irene even shouted in her heart, I can't do it. If they didn't want to stay here, they had to go upstairs. But if they left the first floor, they might encounter danger. Now that so many people had died, the 5 of them didn't dare to go upstairs. Left with no choice, the 5 of them had to use magic to clean up the toilet. Opening the window, the stench in the toilet was sucked into the heavy rain. Zicheng also used water magic to flush the toilet. Even those small mosquitoes were burned away by their fire magic. After cleaning up, the entire toilet looked much cleaner and smelled much better. Because the toilets on the first floor were specially designed for the servants, it was built quite big. At most, it could be used by 10 people at the same time. Irene thought of the ghost stories she read before. Didn't those stories say that the dirty things liked to stay in the last compartment of the toilet the most? So after the toilet was cleaned, she immediately chose the middle compartment. Zicheng probably also read ghost stories, so he also chose the middle compartment. Fengwu randomly chose the third compartment and walked in. Xianni and Yaoyu also didn't choose, they randomly chose a compartment and squatted in. Outside, the sound of rain and thunder didn't stop. Just now when they were talking it was fine, but once they stopped talking, they felt very scared. Irene swallowed her saliva. Although this world was a world of magic and swords, it did not mean that she was not afraid of ghosts. There were very few girls who were not afraid of ghosts and monsters. Other than Yaoyu and Fengwu who were not afraid of these things, the other 3 girls' hearts were somewhat unsettled. This was especially true for Irene and Zicheng. In modern society, they had been influenced by horror movies. Horror movies such as The Village Zombie, The Ring, Sadako, Hanako, and so on played in their minds from time to time. They felt a chill run down their backs. Where's Sunny? She's been in there for so long and she still hasn't come out. Yaoyu was the 4th person to come out. She didn't expect that there would be someone who came out later than her. Xianni, are you done? Zicheng yelled at the spot where Xianni was squatting. But there was no response. Irene couldn't help but call out to her, but there was still no sound. Other than the sound of the rain, there was no other sound in the toilet. There was no response from the 2 of them. The girls exchanged glances and felt that something was wrong. Yaoyu, as a necromancer, was the first to step forward. Irene and Zicheng frowned and followed closely behind. Fengwu was the last to walk. Yaoyu pulled Xianni to guard the spot where she was squatting. Her other hand was holding her staff, and she swallowed her saliva. Just as she was about to pull the door open, the door unexpectedly opened by itself. Ah! Irene and Yaoyu were shocked and couldn't help but scream. What are you doing? Are you trying to scare me to death? Xianni glared at Yaoyu and the others with dissatisfaction. What are we doing? I should be the one asking you, what are you doing? We called you for a long time and you didn't answer. We thought you were already killed. Irene also replied, not to be outdone. Who said that I must answer when you call me? Hey, I won't answer. What can you do to me? Xianni's complacent look made people want to give her a few tight slaps. Yaoyu was so angry that she wanted to hit someone. She was a 7th-year student of the Notre Dame du Starlight. When had she ever been treated so rudely? If it wasn't for Zicheng holding her back, Yaoyu's palm would have already landed on Xianni's face. The group parted unhappily because of Xianni. Yaoyu left with the girls in her team, not paying any attention to Xianni who was walking at the back. They didn't notice that Xianni's expression changed when the 4 of them turned around. She was struggling and confused, and there was even a trace of pain in her eyes. Her expression changed very quickly, and soon she was back to her previous self, walking behind the 4 of them with a nonchalant expression. After that unhappy parting, no one paid special attention to Xianni. So when Xianni suddenly died a day later, Fengwu and the other girls were shocked. What a strange death. She died with a smile. This place is getting creepier and creepier. If we don't find a way to leave, I'm afraid we'll all die here. How can a dead person still smile? Looking at her smile, I feel a chill down my spine. That's right. It's really creepy. What shocked everyone about Xianni's death wasn't her death, but the way she died. Her death was different from everyone else's. The others would either freeze to death with no expression on their faces, or die with a pained expression on their faces. But when it came to Xianni, she died with a smile on her face. Her smile was so contented that it was terrifying to see a dead person smile like that. Other than this smile, the cause of death was exactly the same as everyone else's. She was frozen to death. When she died, Xianni's body was covered in a layer of white frost, as if she had been frozen in a freezer for a whole night. When Xianni died, she was still tightly hugging the doll that she had secretly taken away. She didn't let go of the doll until she died. The whispers around weren't hidden from the others, so of course the people from Caesar heard them. But at this time, they couldn't care less about what others were saying. As more and more people died, everyone wanted to leave. But the rain didn't stop, so no one could leave. They wanted to find the evil creature that had killed so many people, but they couldn't find any clues. At this time, Xianni died. Her death put a lot of psychological pressure on everyone. Everyone felt a little helpless. They couldn't find the evil creature, and they couldn't leave this place. Were they really going to wait for death? Is there something wrong with this doll? Zicheng asked doubtfully. This doll was brought down by Xianni herself from upstairs, and it was very precious. Although he hadn't spoken to Xianni since yesterday, Zicheng still noticed some of her actions, such as her love for the doll. Chapter 490. This doll was brought down by Xianni herself, and it was very precious. Even though he hadn't spoken to Xianni since yesterday, but Zicheng still noticed some of her actions, such as her love for the doll. Yao Yu also felt that there might be something wrong with the dolls. Otherwise, how could Xianni die so quickly after getting the doll? But she really didn't feel anything wrong. She had already checked the dolls. There shouldn't be any problems. Even though she was suspicious, Yao Yu was glad that she didn't take the dolls. At first, she had the same plan as Xianni, to take the dolls, but as a necromancer, she changed her mind. In the end, she didn't take the dolls and even tried to persuade Xianni, but Xianni didn't listen. I didn't see anything wrong. Yao Yu shook her head. But everyone should still be careful. Don't touch anything in this house. Yao Yu said. She felt that Xianni's death might not have much to do with the dolls. The biggest possibility was that she casually took something in this house, which made the evil creature hate Xianni, and killed her. That evil creature had been killing men recently. Before Xianni, there was a girl who died, so it could be seen that the evil creature was more interested in men than women. This time, it suddenly attacked Xianni. It was most likely because Xianni had violated its taboo. While Yao Yu was speculating about Xianni's death, Fengwu was pacing back and forth in the house. That Yao Yu's ability isn't up to par. If you listen to her, you'll be dead. At first, I wanted to let you guys practice on that fellow, but now it seems impossible. If you guys don't leave now, you'll all die here. Bao Bao's voice passed through Fengwu's consciousness. After Bao Bao pointed out that this place was a place of extreme ease, Bao Bao followed the principle of keeping a low profile, and didn't speak carelessly anymore. Bao Bao didn't want to be discovered by these humans, and bring unknown danger to himself. If the situation wasn't so serious, Bao Bao didn't want to make a move. Bao Bao, is there really a basement under this house? Fengwu checked all the suspicious places according to Bao Bao's words, but she didn't find any suspicious places in the basement. She couldn't help but frown and ask through consciousness. Of course. Don't underestimate baby. I don't know what's in this basement, but I should be able to help you find that thing. Baby patted his chest as he spoke. Fengwu listened to Bao Bao's promise and continued to search. Finally, after she lifted a piece of worn carpet, she found a piece of floorboard that was slightly different from the rest. Under that piece of floorboard, she found something that looked like a button. Under Bao Bao's urging, Fengwu pressed the button. After a rumbling sound, a piece of the floor opened up, and a dark underground staircase appeared in front of everyone. Everyone didn't have time to investigate the cause of Xianni's death, and they all gathered around. They were very enthusiastic about the sudden appearance of the underground passage, and their eyes were full of hope. Everyone saw this passage as their hope to leave, but Fengwu knew it wasn't the way out. Bao Bao had already told her that there was a basement below, and it wasn't a passage to the outside world. She didn't tell the AI that she already knew there was no way out. It was Bao Bao who told her to do this. Fengwu was an obedient girl, and in her eyes, Bao Bao was very smart. Listening to Bao Bao was the right thing to do. Bao Bao was very satisfied with the Fengwu girl. In the past, the humans who wanted to contract with the wise beast all wanted the wise beast to listen to their orders and do whatever they wanted. It would be best if the wise beast was obedient. There really wasn't a master like Fengwu who would listen to her own wise beast. Bao Bao liked Fengwu's personality very much. It wasn't that Bao Bao wanted Fengwu to listen to him from now on, but it was because having such a master was much better than having a scheming master. Wise beasts were smart enough. Many people thought that the master they liked must be as smart as them. In fact, everyone was wrong about this. Wise beasts weren't interested in those so-called smart people. Smart people always thought too much and did too much. Wise beasts actually liked to live a peaceful and stable life. It was very hard to live with such people. However, Fengwu, a human who didn't think too much and never asked them to do anything, was very much liked by wise beasts. "Do you think this is the exit?" someone asked expectantly. "It's possible. I feel that there must be an exit below," someone said with certainty and excitement. "Let's go down and see." These people discussed, and the conclusion was to go down and see what was below. Everyone hoped that this was the exit to leave the land of extreme negative energy. However, everyone was destined to be disappointed. This wasn't an exit. Mojiafri signaled everyone to be careful with his eyes. There must be unknown dangers in this place. As the team leader of this mission, he made the team lose a person. He couldn't let anyone in the team lose their lives again. Boss Hart also exchanged glances with the man and woman who had been following him. The three of them remained silent. Bao Bao stared at the man and woman behind Boss Hart, and a trace of interest flashed in his eyes. Everyone else was focused on the passage in front of them, so they didn't notice the eye contact between these people. The fire ability user led the way in front, while the others walked behind. With the fire ability user's fireball illumination, all the scenes in the basement appeared clearly in front of everyone. To everyone's disappointment, this wasn't an exit. It was just an underground laboratory. There was a reason why it was called a laboratory. What was the reason? There were some transparent utensils around, and these utensils contained the bodies of some children. These children were no more than 5 or 6 years old at most. They were all innocent and cute, but they died just like that. There were more than a dozen children's bodies here, and each of them was incomplete. Their flesh and blood had been ruthlessly peeled off, leaving only skinless corpses. No one knew what kind of medicine was in these utensils, but it kept the corpses fresh. They didn't turn into a pile of bones because of time. They looked like they had just been skinned. This cruel and terrible scene shocked everyone's heart. Everyone suddenly felt a sense of disgust towards the owner of this laboratory. No matter who this person was, treating those cute children like this was even more cruel than the devil. Chapter 491. Everyone suddenly felt a sense of disgust towards the owner of this laboratory. No matter who this person was, treating those cute children like this was even more cruel than the devil. The layout of the entire laboratory was very simple. Aside from some utensils, there was only a large table with a few dolls on it. These dolls were only half-finished products. Seeing these dolls, everyone had some guesses in their hearts, but they were not too sure. The entire laboratory could be said to be clear at a glance. On the large table, there was a thick notebook placed in the center of the table. This notebook had been through many years and was covered in dust. Among the crowd, there was someone with sharp eyes and nimble hands who picked up the notebook and casually flipped through it. From the first page, there was not much recorded. It only said that the owner of this notebook was invited to this ancient castle by a noble. Then there was a description of the ancient castle's scenery, as well as a description of the male and female owners. In this notebook, this ancient castle belonged to a noble more than 1,000 years ago. This noble and his wife were very loving. The two of them finally had a cute daughter and naturally doted on her very much. This noble's daughter loved all kinds of dolls, but because those dolls were not realistic enough, this noble's daughter did not have much interest in them. After playing with the dolls for a day or two, she would burn them without looking at them. Then she would look for new dolls and burn them again. This cycle repeated over and over again. On the noble's daughter's 5th birthday, The male owner wanted to give his daughter a special gift, so he invited the most famous craftsman of that time to make dolls. This craftsman was, of course, the owner of the notebook. After the owner of the notebook was invited with a large sum of money, he was required to make a doll that satisfied the young lady before her 5th birthday. If he could not make it, he would never be able to walk out of here alive. The owner of the notebook was only a craftsman who could make dolls. How could he resist a noble? Therefore, he stayed in this ancient castle and tried his best to make a doll that met the young lady's requirements. Unfortunately, the dolls he made were not realistic enough and were very different from real people, so they were not accepted by the noble's family. Helpless, he could only continue. He only hoped that he could quickly make a doll that satisfied the noble's family, and then leave this gorgeous cage to return home. He worked very hard, but the things he made could not satisfy this family. He was imprisoned in this laboratory and kept making a breeding doll. He wanted to leave this place and be free. At this time, the servant who came to deliver food to him every day became a little girl of 6 or 7 years old. The little girl was very cute, and her eyes were filled with curiosity and shyness. An idea suddenly popped up in his mind. He recalled a secret technique related to necromancers that he had accidentally obtained in the past. Later on, the little girl disappeared. At the same time that the little girl disappeared, a brand new doll appeared. No one knew what the doll was made of, but they knew that the doll felt just like a real person, making people unable to put it down. Sure enough, this doll was liked by the young ladies of the noble families. The disappearance of a small servant didn't arouse anyone's attention at all. In this ancient castle, it didn't even cause a splash. At the young mistress's 5th birthday party, she made a grand entrance with this doll in her arms. This unique, lifelike doll aroused everyone's interest. After the party, who knew how many people were willing to spend a lot of money to buy a similar doll for their wives and daughters? After many years of living a luxurious life, this noble family's financial situation was far worse than before. The doll in front of him made this noble feel that there was a business opportunity, a chance for his family to advance further. Therefore, the noble didn't let the owner of the notebook go. He even asked the owner of the notebook to make a large number of these dolls for him to sell. Helpless, the owner of the notebook could only tell him that the doll's main material was actually human skin. As it turned out, the owner of the notebook, who was also the craftsman trapped here, had used the skin of the missing little girl and a forbidden necromancy magic book that he had accidentally obtained to create a bottle of doll that had the texture of real skin. The skin on a little girl's body could be made into at most 2 dolls. It was impossible to mass-produce these dolls. When he told the truth to this noble, he thought that he would be reprimanded as a demon or an unscrupulous person. Unexpectedly, the noble didn't say anything. Although he was surprised at first, he didn't show any other expression after that. He even assured him that the noble would help him prepare the children he needed. What he needed to do was to continuously make those realistic dolls. The owner of the notebook couldn't resist this noble. He knew that once he escaped, his family would immediately be in danger. The owner of the notebook couldn't do anything. He could only stay and help the noble make these heinous human skin dolls. After the dolls were officially put on sale, business was very good. They were loved by many ladies. Because the main material used to make these dolls was special, it was impossible to mass-produce them. Therefore, only 30 dolls were made every month. Every time these 30 dolls were released, they would immediately be sold like crazy. With the human skin doll business, the noble family earned a lot of money. They even formed relationships with some other families. Perhaps it was because the level of the forbidden necromancy technique that the owner of the notebook had picked up was too high, but no one on the continent could tell what was different about these dolls. Since no one could tell, this meant that this business could continue. Of course, the noble family was happy. They began to ask the craftsmen to make more dolls for them to sell. However, these dolls had to be made from the skin of a child. How could they not make more? The craftsman became more and more upset under the pressure of the noble couple. He wanted to escape more and more. He began to regret using the little girl's skin to make that doll. If he hadn't made a mistake in the beginning, he wouldn't have been forced to do so many heinous things. The coercion of the noble finally reached the end of the craftsman's patience. He didn't want to do such harmful things anymore. He wanted to be free. Other than him and the noble, no one knew that every time a doll was made, the person whose skin and flesh were stripped would not only die, but their soul would also be sealed in the doll. Because one piece of human skin could be made into 2 dolls, the souls of the children were divided into 2 halves. Half of the souls of the 2 dolls were sealed in each. Chapter 492. Apart from him and the noble, no one else knew that every time a doll was made, not only would the person's body be stripped of their flesh die, but their soul would also be sealed within the doll. Since one piece of human skin could be made into 2 dolls, the souls of the children were split into 2 halves, with half of the souls of the 2 dolls sealed within. The souls of the dolls were incomplete, and they were sealed in a terrible state. The souls of the dolls were filled with ruthless killing intent. Once these souls were released, this place would instantly turn into a Jura hell. The man was no longer afraid of death. To him, death was a kind of relief. Every day, he would see the corpses of countless children when he opened his eyes. In his dreams, he would see the souls of the children who had died with their eyes wide open. If he continued to live like this, even if he didn't die, he would go crazy. The man decided to drag everyone in this ancient castle down to hell as revenge for the innocent children who had been killed. Before releasing the souls, he did one last thing. He made the noble's beloved daughter into an exquisite doll. Unlike the other dolls, the noble's daughter's body was only made into a doll. He sealed the noble's daughter's soul within the doll. Then, apart from the doll sealed by the noble's daughter, all the souls sealed within the dolls were released. These souls were forced out, and as expected, they killed everyone in this ancient castle. At the end of the notebook, it was recorded that the man had released all the souls. Then, the noble's family was killed, and he sat in the basement, waiting for these innocent souls to come and kill him. The last record was very messy. It seemed that the man's mood was not as calm as he had written. At the very end, it was written that they had come. They had finally come. It ended just like that. There were no other records after that. The notebook was very thick, but most of it recorded the experimental data he had done. The complete story was interspersed with the experiment notes. It wasn't until the end that the whole story was completely pieced together. The dolls upstairs are actually made of human skin. And there are human souls hidden in the dolls. I knew those dolls felt like real people. There's definitely something wrong with them. Mingxi looked around, but he didn't see any human skeletons. Could it be that the souls of the dead had swallowed everyone here, including their bones? If that wasn't the case, how could they explain the fact that no bones had been found? Mingxi still had a lot of questions he couldn't figure out. Everyone took the notebook and searched the entire laboratory. After making sure that they hadn't missed anything, they left together and sealed the underground laboratory. Although they still did not find any evil spirits, they already knew that there was a suspicious item in the notebook, and that was the doll. Dolls made from human skin tissue. Although Yao Yu said that there was no problem with these dolls after looking at them, through this notebook, it could be seen that these dolls were the most suspicious. After some discussion, everyone came to a decision, which was to destroy the doll. Fengwu followed everyone to the room upstairs where the dolls were placed. She watched as the fire magician used a fireball to burn the dolls. However, after being burned by the fire, the doll was not damaged at all. They did not know if it was their imagination, but they felt that the doll's smile was a little hideous. Originally, after reading the notebook, they felt that these dolls looked gloomy. Now they felt that there was something wrong with these dolls, and they didn't dare to get close to them. After failing to destroy the dolls after trying all sorts of methods, Zicheng stepped forward. He possessed the extreme purple heavenly sun flame, which was ranked 5th on the heavenly flame list. He wanted to use his heavenly flame to burn the dolls. Not many people knew that Zicheng had the heavenly fire. Although the heavenly fire was a treasure that made people envious, now was not the time to be envious. When one's life was in danger, any kind of treasure would be very difficult to attract. Miss Zicheng, whether we can get out of here alive depends on you. If we can get out of here alive, we will definitely remember your kindness. Most people looked at Zicheng with gratitude, who came out at this time to reveal that she had the heavenly fire. Zicheng modestly expressed that there was no need for them to be so grateful. Her modesty and unwillingness to take credit for herself greatly increased the favorability of everyone. It was an unexpected gain. Even Caesar, who already had a good impression of her, was looking at her with tenderness. Zicheng found that Caesar's favorability towards her had increased by a little. It seemed that she was very close to 100% favorability. But why did Caesar's brother still have a favorable impression of her? What was wrong with this person? Shozo stood silently at the side, quietly watching these people flatter Zicheng. If they knew that Zicheng was the person who would destroy the world in the future, what kind of expression would they have? After coming to this ancient castle, Shozo had been very low-key. He almost didn't talk much. Standing beside Caesar, he didn't seem to have much of a presence, but many people paid attention to him. No one knew that Caesar hadn't been idle during this period. He had been observing this ancient castle, looking for a way to break through the barrier. After more than 100 years, Shozo had already become a well-known array master. Because he couldn't cultivate, he spent most of his time learning these miscellaneous things, such as array formation, alchemy, and alchemy. He had dabbled in all of them. Moreover, he had reached the peak of a master of his generation. This was also the reason why in the future, when he was just an ordinary person, his family was willing to use precious life-prolonging potions and spiritual fruits for him. This was because he would be more helpful to the family if he were alive than if he were dead. This was the way the world was. Whether one could live a better life than others depended on one's strength. With a certain strength, even if he was just an ordinary person, he could live a better life than those mages and swordmasters. In addition to looking for a way to break through the barrier, Shozo had also been in contact with Irene, wanting to know more about the plot of this place. It was a pity that even Irene didn't know much about this place. This was because that basement didn't exist in the original novel. Naturally, no one knew that there was something wrong with those dolls. It was impossible for Shozo to have a good impression of Zicheng. No normal person would have a good impression of a Terminator. Zicheng couldn't understand why Shozo didn't like her. She had asked Caesar about this in a roundabout way, but Caesar had said that Shozo was indifferent to everyone and didn't dislike her. She couldn't get an answer from Caesar, and she couldn't figure out the answer either. She couldn't figure out why Xiaozu didn't have a good impression of her when she was willing to reveal the secret of her heavenly fire to save everyone here. How could there be such a person who was so difficult to gain a good impression of? Chapter 493. Zicheng grumbled a few words in his heart, and after modestly expressing that everyone need not take this matter to heart, he immediately used his heavenly flame purple sun fire to burn these dolls. The magical flames of fire magic were useless, but the extreme young purple heavenly sun fire was effective. When this flame touched the dolls, they immediately started to burn. After the dolls started to burn, a burst of sharp cry suddenly came out from the burning dolls. This sound was very mournful, like the scream of a child. At the same time, in Yao Yu's eyes, the world in front of her eyes had changed. One after another, pale-faced little girls stood in front of everyone, but among so many people, other than Yao Yu and Fengwu, no one could see them. The hiding place of these spirits was destroyed, and they were also burned by Zicheng's heavenly flame. Their face was filled with resentment as they stared at everyone and screamed miserably. That ear-piercing screams, as if glass was pierced, made the complexion of everyone changed. Everyone was secretly on guard, but they couldn't see anything. Yao Yu quickly reacted by using her magic staff to cast undead magic. Each of these spirits were filled with monstrous resentment. Moreover, their body was surging with baleful aura. With one glance, one could see that these spirits had killed many people. Yao Yu wanted to use magic to collect these spirits. She trapped these spirits with great difficulty, and wanted to cast magic to send these little guys to reincarnation. But she didn't expect that in the end, she simply couldn't send them away. Yao Yu? Mogfil looked at Yao Yu with inquiring eyes. Just a moment ago, everyone saw the scene of Yao Yu casting undead magic. Just when everyone thought that Yao Yu could successfully subdue these spirits, They didn't expect that she would suddenly stop. This sudden change made everyone uneasy. Everyone felt that Yao Yu might have a problem here. Among so many people, only Yao Yu could see the spirits. If even Yao Yu couldn't do it, then could it be that everyone could only wait for death here? Catch this, spray it on your eyes. A bottle of clear spirit elixir was thrown to Mogfiel. Mogfiel caught it and immediately sprayed it on his eyes. After Mogfiel, a bottle of clear spirit elixir was passed down one by one. Finally, everyone could see those unknown spirits. Everything that they couldn't see before was now before their eyes. All of the pale-faced young ladies in white dresses were fighting with Yao Yu with hatred. However, Yao Yu's situation was not good. It seemed that she could not hold on for much longer. Everyone was shocked and immediately raised their hands to cast magic and doqi to help. Unfortunately, even though they could see the spirits, they might not be able to hit them. Spirits didn't have a physical body. Apart from special necromancy magic, no other magic could harm them. This guy only has half of his soul left. If his soul isn't whole, it's impossible to send him into the cycle of reincarnation. How can he not know this? The baby sat on Fengwu's head and watched the show. Other than Fengwu, no one could hear its voice. Where is the other half? Fengwu tilted her head. I don't know, Bao Bao said. Trap! Finally, Yao Yu couldn't hold on any longer. At the last moment, she used a trapping array to trap all these spirits together, making them unable to escape for a while. Miss Yaoyue, are you alright? Miss Yaoyue, what should we do now? Could it be that these things can't be killed? Yao Yu, come over and rest for a while. The last sentence was said by the team leader, Mogwalai. Mogwalai was still very concerned about his team members. Yao Yu nodded with a pale face. With the help of Irene and Zicheng, she sat on a chair to rest. When she was resting, she took out a bottle of medicine from her space ring and drank it. Under the effect of the medicine, her pale face finally recovered a lot. Her face began to show a healthy red color. Everyone originally had a lot of questions to ask, but seeing that Yao Yu was really tired, they didn't want to pester her to not let her rest. They could only stand at the side anxiously. Everyone, don't be anxious. I was just about to tell everyone the situation. Yao Yu drank the medicine and rested for a while. I believe that everyone has seen it. I originally wanted to send these spirits into reincarnation. Unfortunately, their spirits are incomplete and can't be sent away. I can't even completely destroy them. No matter if we want to completely destroy these spirits or send them into reincarnation, we have to find the other half of their souls. If we can't find it, there is a high possibility that we will never be able to leave here. Yao Yu told everyone the worst situation. She didn't hide anything. In this kind of situation, she couldn't hide it. But we don't know where the other half of their souls are. Someone said softly. Whatever, even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we have to find the other half. Someone firmly clenched his hand. In order to escape, everyone burst out with great potential and began to look for all the suspicious things in the house. According to the experience of this doll, it was very likely that the other half of the soul was hidden in some inconspicuous object. In order to find the other half, they took down all the decorations and suspicious objects and put them on the ground. Then they let Zicheng burn them with fire. They planned to cast the net on a large scale. No matter what, they had to catch some fish. Otherwise, they would be dead. Finally, everyone's idea was not wrong. After the pile of things was burned, waves of screams were heard. Then many children who looked exactly like those spirits appeared in front of everyone. They all saw that these spirits came out from a painting. Don't do anything. Don't hurt us. We didn't do anything. The little girls cried out in grievance. Each of the little girls had tears in their eyes and looked like they were complaining. This person couldn't bear to do anything to them. How did you all get sealed in the painting? Fengwu went forward curiously. She wasn't afraid of being hurt by these spirits. The little girls only saw an expressionless girl suddenly go forward. They were a little scared at first, but after feeling the comfortable aura of the girl, they weren't scared at all. They surrounded Fengwu enthusiastically and answered Fengwu's questions. We couldn't beat them, so we were locked up. If you didn't burn these paintings, we wouldn't have been able to get out. The little girls said, feeling wronged. They're really bad. Every time someone comes in, they'll kill them. You have to be careful not to get killed. One of the little girls was very worried about Fengwu's safety. They're all bad. They want us to merge with them and use their consciousness as the master. They want us to disappear completely. Chapter 494. These little fellows were still very young, but they were still able to clearly express their own consciousness. Combined with what these little fellows said, the souls of these little fellows should be divided into two parts, one good and one evil. The good part was these little fellows in front of them, and the evil part was trapped in the room just now. The evil spirit carried all the negative emotions of the children when they died, such as unwillingness and resentment, while the good spirit carried the innocence and kindness of the children. Since ancient times, good and evil were one. There was no pure good, and there was no pure evil. If a person only had a good side or an evil side and no other emotions, then that person had already walked to the extreme, and it was very likely that he would become a demon. Of course, the spirits of these children could not become demons. They were just ordinary spirits, but they were forcefully divided into good and evil sides. The incomplete souls made them endure endless pain every day, and they could not rest in peace. Therefore, they were unable to enter the reincarnation cycle. Miss Yaoyu, what should we do now? Should we kill them all? Should we let them fuse before killing them? Most of the people agreed to kill these little fellows. These spirits killed so many of their people, and if they were not killed, it would not be enough to appease the anger of the people. Let's send them to the underworld. After going to the underworld, they will naturally atone for their crimes. Yaoyu thought for a while and said, sending them to the reincarnation cycle was obviously unrealistic. They bore the burden of many people's lives, and before they paid off the karma they owed, even if they were sent to the reincarnation cycle, the possibility of them being safely born was very small. Even if they were lucky enough to be born, there was a possibility that they would be trash with no talent, and the kind of trash that would die young after a few years. Thinking of the fate they would face after reincarnation, it was better to send them to the underworld and let them redeem their sins before reincarnating. Even if they could not become geniuses after reincarnating, they would not have to worry about becoming trash or dying young. In the end, the result of the discussion was still Yaoyu's idea of sending these little fellows to the underworld. However, before sending them to the underworld, there was still a problem, and that was to let their souls fuse. To do this, they would need the help of Zicheng and her heavenly flame. He had Zicheng use the heavenly fire to burn those evil spirits to the brink of death, and then let the good side appear to merge with them. The plan went very smoothly. After the souls of the good and evil sides were successfully fused, the souls of me and these little fellows were eventually sent to the underworld. In the underworld, they would pay for their crimes. Only after he had atoned for his sins could he enter the cycle of reincarnation again. Fengwu watched these little things disappear and couldn't help but look out the window. It was still raining outside, and it was still raining heavily. Fengwu was not the only one who noticed that something was wrong with the rain. Many people noticed it as well. Logically speaking, the enchantment should have disappeared after they purified the wraiths here, but the enchantment didn't disappear. The rain was still falling, and they were still trapped. How can this be? Why hasn't the barrier been opened yet? They had clearly sent away those vengeful spirits, hadn't they? Why were they still trapped in this place? What was going on? Did we miss something? Caesar guessed. A doll. Irene and Zicheng exclaimed at the same time. Didn't we burn all the dolls? Where are the dolls? Tang Nuod said as he scratched his head. It's not the dolls that were burned. There's still a doll, the one that Xianyi was holding. Irene also just remembered that they had missed a doll. It's that doll. We forgot to burn it together. Zicheng said. Then what are we waiting for? Let's burn the doll now. Someone shouted. Everyone arrived at the place where Xianyi's body was, but the doll was already gone. Everyone looked at each other and looked around, but there was no sign of the doll. Could it have been taken by someone? A family disciple standing beside Caesar couldn't help but whisper. Hurry up and tell us who took it. Hurry up and hand it over. How dare they take anything? Do they want to die? That's so unfair. Who would take that toy? It's not like they don't want to die. That's right. Xianyi died because she touched those dolls. It's not like we don't want to live anymore. Who would complain about living too long? Everyone said that they didn't touch the doll. Where did the doll go? It couldn't have run away on its own, right? Are you looking for me? Hee hee. A soft and cute laugh sounded. Everyone turned around and saw a little loli about 5 years old walking down the stairs with a doll in her arms. The little loli was smart and cute. Her chubby little round face was indescribably cute. It wasn't a big deal for such a little girl to suddenly appear, but it was a big deal that she appeared here. Not to mention that she was holding the missing doll in her arms. Everyone was on guard. They had all guessed the identity of this little loli. This little girl was very likely the spirit that escaped from the doll. However, she looked different from the other spirits. Her body wasn't like the other spirits that were somewhat illusory. She looked very real, just like a real human child. You are the daughter of the owner of this house. Yao Yu looked at the little girl who suddenly appeared. It was obvious that she was different from the other spirits. A thought flashed through her mind. You know who I am. The little loli seemed to be very happy. Her eyes squinted happily. So it is. No wonder she looks different from the other spirits. Irene nodded. She also thought of the problem that Yao Yu thought of. Mingxi pulled Fengwu's hand and took a step back. This child gave him a very dangerous feeling. This was definitely not an ordinary spirit. Fengwu stood obediently beside Mingxi. From time to time, she would use her consciousness to communicate with Bao Bao. For example, the two of them were communicating with the little loli that suddenly appeared. When we fight later, you have to run faster. This is a boss. Bao Bao said worriedly. Xiaoqun is currently leveling up. He can't protect you. This level of spirit isn't something you can deal with now. I will immediately return to the spirit world. Only that Rainbow Phoenix fellow can save you. Didn't you say that we can't communicate with the outside world? Fengwu blinked her eyes like a curious baby. Normal methods won't work, but I can. I can. You forgot what Bao Bao is. Bao Bao is a wise beast. In terms of enchantment power, no one is stronger than me. It's a pity that I can leave the enchantment by myself, but I can't bring anyone with me. Otherwise, I would have taken you with me. Now I have to find that Rainbow Phoenix fellow to save you. Chapter 495. Ordinary methods won't work, but I can do it. Have you forgotten what kind of beast I am? I am the wise beast. In terms of the power of enchantment, no one is stronger than me. It's a pity that I can get out of the enchantment by myself, but I can't take others with me. Otherwise, I would have taken you with me. Now I have to find the 7-colored phoenix to save you. The Wise Beast clan had never had much attack power. The power of enchantment was their strongest self-protection ability. When they encountered danger, they could use the power of enchantment to block all the dangers outside. They could also simply pass through the enchantment set up by others. However, the ability to pass through the enchantment could only be used by themselves. They couldn't take others with them. If it could take others out, it would have taken Fengwu away long ago. There was no need to stay in this place. It was also a mistake. It didn't expect that such a powerful spirit would form in this place. It was afraid that all the people here together wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between its teeth. After greeting Fengwu and asking her to take good care of itself, Bao Bao used its ability to pass through the enchantment and return to the spiritual world. It can actually break my enchantment. What is that little thing? Although the little loli was called a big boss by Bao Bao, she didn't have much knowledge. She was only 5 years old when she died. How much knowledge could she have? It was understandable that she didn't know the wise beast, which was very famous in ancient times or even longer ago. The others didn't know what the little loli was talking about. They each held their weapons and looked at the child in front of them. They didn't dare to look down on her just because she was a child. Zicheng felt a dangerous aura from the child. This feeling was so strong that she couldn't ignore it. She believed in her feelings very much. It seemed that she had to take the last step. Looking at the price in the system store that was so high that it made people want to vomit blood, Zicheng had to clench her teeth and buy the boundary-breaking talisman. She put the boundary-breaking talisman away with heartache. If the situation went wrong, she would immediately use the boundary-breaking talisman to leave this place. Irene secretly paid attention to Zicheng. Seeing her suddenly relieved, she suspected that she had already bought the boundary-breaking talisman to protect herself. It seemed like the key to leaving this place was still Zicheng. Irene secretly gave Xiaozuo a look, telling him to keep an eye on Zicheng and not miss the opportunity to leave. As for the others, it would depend on their luck. She couldn't just run out and tell them that Zicheng had a way to leave and that everyone should keep an eye on her. It would be strange if people didn't think of him as a lunatic. Xiaozuo noticed Irene's gaze and understood what she was trying to say. He nodded to indicate that he would pay attention to it. Can you guys play with me? I've lived here for so long, and no one wants to play with me. You guys stay and play with me. The little loli clapped her hands excitedly, as if she really wanted someone to stay and play with her. No, we still have things to do and cannot stay here. Can you let us leave this place? If you can, we will be very grateful to you. Yao Yu shook her head, rejecting her suggestion. After hearing Yao Yu's answer, the little loli looked at the others. What about you guys? Don't you want to stay and play with me? Her voice sounded very disappointed. It seemed a little cruel to make such a child sad, but at this time, who would pity a child? Besides, she wasn't a child but a scary spirit. Everyone shook their heads, indicating that they didn't want to stay and play with her. The smile on the little loli's face disappeared, and her small face became gloomy and scary. If you don't want to play with me, then go down and die. If you die, you can stay and play with me forever, just like the others. The little loli once again showed a cute smile. But this smile in the eyes of others was even scarier than the devil's smile. Go to hell, stinky girl. You want to kill me? Let's see if you have the ability. An adventurer holding a knife couldn't help but raise his weapon and slashed at the little loli. Who knew that before his knife could cut the little loli's body, the little girl disappeared in front of his eyes. In less than a second, she appeared behind the adventurer. Caught you, you have to accompany me. The little loli patted the adventurer's shoulder, and in just 3 seconds, the adventurer turned into an ice sculpture. Dead, he actually died so easily. She didn't do anything, she just used her small hand, which was so small that people couldn't raise their vigilance, and lightly patted on the adventurer's shoulder, and the adventurer died. Before he died, he didn't even have time to scream. Too scary, so scary that it made people shudder. In the end, what kind of strength did she have to be able to do this? Everyone took a big step back, and they didn't even think of attacking. At this time, there was only one thought in their mind: escape, they must escape. Yao Yu took a few steps back, and her heart was cold. She had never seen such a powerful spirit. A spirit with such strength was too rare. As an undead, it wasn't easy to have such strength that was stronger than a human. The time needed was unimaginable. She could cultivate to such strength in just more than 1,000 years, which could only prove one point. This child was born with a spiritual body, which was the most suitable physique to become a spirit cultivator. With a super talent and more than 1,000 years, it was not strange that she could cultivate to such a level. This kind of spirit was simply the object that all necromancers wanted to contract the most. If she hadn't been trapped here since childhood and couldn't leave, if she had shown her face to the outside world, she was afraid that all the necromancers would have come to find her. This kind of powerful spirit was the most difficult to find. Getting her meant having more powerful strength. If she met this girl when she was still weak, Yao Yu would have been very excited. However, the time they met was wrong. They met more than 1,000 years later, and this little spirit already had the strength to kill everyone present. At this time, not to mention the contract, whether they could escape was a problem. Yao Yu smiled bitterly in her heart. In the past, she couldn't meet such a spirit. Now that she met it, she could die at any time. How could she not smile bitterly? She had a hunch that this time, all of them would have to give up here. All of them together couldn't be this little girl's opponent. It's your turn, you all stay with me. The little loli clapped her hands, turned her head and smiled at everyone. Let's go. Many people were so scared that they didn't even have the courage to fight with the little loli. They ran away like crazy. They forgot that no matter how they ran, it was impossible to escape from this ancient castle. This ancient castle was like a huge cage that locked all of them inside. Chapter 496. However, they had forgotten that no matter how hard they tried, they would not be able to escape the castle. The castle was like a huge cage that trapped all of them inside. Some people fled in all directions, while others were on guard and did not dare to move forward. They raised their weapons to protect themselves. Those who escaped did not expect that the little loli was not interested in those who stood there motionless. Instead, she was more interested in those who escaped. If they had known earlier, they would not have regretted their decision to escape. Caesar was worried that Zicheng would be in danger. Ever since the little loli showed her amazing lethality, he had been guarding Zicheng, carefully protecting her. Although Caesar's affection for Zicheng was not 100%, it was already around 95%. This showed that he truly loved her. Although Shozo did not know how much Caesar liked Zicheng, he could see that his brother had already taken Zicheng to heart. At the very least, he knew that Caesar would never protect another woman like this. The housekeeper had always been protecting Shozo. Although Shozo had turned from a wastrel into a genius, the housekeeper was still used to protecting this child that he had watched grow up. Shozo was a little disappointed. His brother had changed. At this time, his first thought was not to protect the other members of the family, but to protect Zicheng, an outsider. No wonder in the future, he would betray the family for Zicheng. He would do so many things that hurt his parents and the interests of the family. It turned out that there were already signs of this a long time ago. Although Shozo was disappointed that Caesar ignored the rest of the family for a woman, he still wanted to save him from Zicheng's control. Irene carefully approached Zicheng. She did not dare to be too far away, for fear that she would not be able to escape in time. Although the boundary-breaking talisman could break all enchantments, because this enchantment was too strong, the boundary-breaking talisman could only open a passage for people to escape. Moreover, it only gave people a short time to escape. If they were not fast enough, they would die in this place without any chance to escape. Because she knew this, Irene still put most of her attention on Zicheng when everyone was guarding against the little loli. She didn't dare to relax in the slightest. You must not leave my side later, do you understand? Mingxi told Fengwu worriedly. The Fengwu girl nodded obediently and held Mingxi's hand tightly, indicating that she would not leave. Would the baby be in a hurry? Fengwu was a little worried. No matter how late she was, she also realized how dangerous her current situation was. She didn't want Mingxi to die. The little bun still needed a father. Mingxi hadn't agreed to marry her yet. They couldn't die. They had to go back to see the little bun alive. Fengwu thought seriously. Mingxi had already pulled out his long sword and held it in front of his chest. His other hand was protecting Fengwu. He was fully on guard. Those people who escaped from time to time let out terrified screams. Those people who screamed, everyone knew that they wouldn't be able to survive. Among the people who stayed in the hall, no one noticed Boss Hart and his two attendants. These three people's expressions were much calmer than the others. Especially the man and woman beside Boss Hart. They didn't have the slightest bit of nervousness. Only 5 minutes had passed, but to everyone here, it felt like a century. It's your turn. The little loli came back with an exceptionally happy smile. There was no need to ask about the life or death of those people. It was impossible for them to survive. What do you want to do? Don't make the same mistake again. You killed so many people. In the future when you enter the underworld, you will be sent to the underworld to suffer. Yao Yu tried to persuade the extremely cute child in front of her. If this was a spiritual body with the thoughts of an adult, the possibility of persuasion would be higher. Unfortunately, this was a child. Although everyone said that children were little angels and were the most adorable and kind in the world, because they were still young, the various kinds of darkness in the world didn't have time to pollute them. In fact, it was because children were still young. In their hearts, they didn't have any concept of good and evil. They didn't know what to do and what not to do. They didn't even know what death meant. Sure enough, the little lowly only blinked her eyes in confusion. I don't care about the underworld or the underworld. I only want you to stay and play with me. You sent my playmates away, so in the future, you have to replace them to accompany me. The little lowly announced domineeringly. She didn't think about whether these people would agree or not. This was her world. As long as she wanted, no one could leave this place. It was very obvious that one should never try to reason with children. If one tried to reason with them, they wouldn't understand what one was saying. You're wrong. You can't continue to kill people. If you continue like this, you can forget about reincarnating forever. Yao Yu also had no other choice. She couldn't beat her. She could only hope to dispel the killing intent in this child's heart through communication. What nonsense are you talking about? I don't understand. Why can't I kill people? Father told me before that as long as I like, I can do anything. This child's 3 stages were obviously not right. But thinking about it, a person who thought of using a child's skin to make a doll to earn money, how could he teach a normal child? You don't have to say anymore. This child won't listen. At this time, a weak white figure suddenly flew out from a landscape painting in the hall. This figure was obviously a spiritual body. Moreover, it was a very weak spiritual body. From the figure and appearance, it could be seen that this spiritual body should be a middle-aged man when he was alive. The man's face revealed a simple and honest look, and from his eyes he seemed to be a little weak. You're the bad guy. Aren't you going to hide? Humph. The little lowly coldly snorted. She seemed to hate the man in front of her. Everyone was curious about the identity of this spiritual body that suddenly appeared. This couldn't be the little lowly's father. From the little lowly's words just now, they could tell that the little lowly and her father's relationship was quite good. If this spiritual body was really the little lowly's father, the little lowly definitely wouldn't have such an attitude. Then the question was, who was this person? You're the one who made those dolls? Mingxi suddenly had a guess. Then he asked suspiciously. The man bitterly laughed. You guessed it. That's right. Those dolls were made by me. I am a sinner. If I knew that I would end up like this, I wouldn't have agreed to make those dolls. You are indeed wrong. You were wrong from the beginning. You couldn't do that family's request and couldn't leave the dolls. Although this is very pitiful, you shouldn't have hurt innocent people for your own selfish reasons. You created such a cruel human skin doll. Chapter 497. You're wrong. You've been wrong from the very beginning. You couldn't do what the family wanted, and the doll couldn't leave. Although this is very pitiful, you shouldn't have harmed an innocent child for your own selfishness, and created such a cruel human skin doll. When Mingxi saw the notebook, he was very disgusted with the owner of the notebook. Although all the evil started because of that noble, the person who created the dolls was not innocent. Compared to that noble who used his power to oppress others, the doll's creator's crimes were not light. The first time he used a child's skin to make a doll, no one forced him to do so. The reason he used a child to make a doll was all his own idea. How could someone who could think of using human skin to make a doll be truly innocent? No matter how much he regretted it later, he would not give him a shred of sympathy. I am indeed not worthy of sympathy. People like me should have killed myself. Otherwise, I would have harmed so many innocent children. The man's eyes were full of regret. He deeply regretted his past sins. He regretted it. If he had not agreed to help make these dolls, perhaps he would not have ended up like this. He thought that he could use his own death to atone for his sins. After his death, he realized that his sins were not so easy to atone for. His soul suffered endless torment every day after his death. Those children hated him and imprisoned his soul in this place. He could not leave and could not reincarnate. He could only suffer unimaginable torture every day. For more than 1,000 years he saw many people die in this place. He also saw the souls of the dead imprisoned by the children's souls. After more than 1,000 years, who knew how many souls were imprisoned in this place? They wanted to leave every day, but they could never do it. Just like him. These children were very hostile to adults, especially men. And the culprit of all this was him, the creator of this tragedy. The person who should never reincarnate. Why did you come out? The little loli was unhappy. She felt that her game was interrupted. She had not played enough with those people. She wanted to put them all into dolls. Then they could stay and play with her forever like the others. Miss, please don't hurt them anymore. Let them go. The man said carefully. It was not that he wanted to let these people go out of kindness, but he had a very bad premonition, especially towards the blonde man. That man gave him a very powerful and terrifying feeling. If that feeling didn't come from his power, then it must have come from his bloodline. He really didn't want to provoke a human with a powerful bloodline inheritance. He still felt very guilty towards the young Mississippi. He had turned an innocent and willful child into a demon. Since the young Miss misfortune was caused by him, in order to make up for it, he didn't want the young Miss to provoke an existence that she shouldn't provoke. Letting these people go was for her own good. If she didn't let them go and something happened to them here, the young Miss would definitely be in trouble in the future. The little loli didn't understand the man's good intentions. She just pouted unhappily. You don't need to care about what I do, bad guy. The little loli unhappily waved her hand, and the man's spirit body slammed into the wall. A spirit body didn't have a physical body and shouldn't be hurt by anything tangible. He didn't expect that the little loli's gentle wave would cause him to slam into the wall and injure him quite badly. The man's spirit body's color dimmed a bit. His originally faint shadow became even weaker. Mind your own business. The little loli pouted and ignored the middle-aged man's spirit body. Instead, she looked at Ming-Shi and the others with great interest. It's your turn now. You all have to stay and play with me. The little loli hugged the dolls and clapped her hands happily. Her small mouth let out a giggle. Her chubby little face was indescribably cute. It was just that no one was in the mood to appreciate her cuteness right now. This clearly cute little face was as scary as a demon in the eyes of others. Let's play ghost catching people. Those who are caught by ghosts will also become ghosts, the little loli happily decided. I'll be the ghost. You all have to be careful. As soon as her voice fell, her figure disappeared. When she reappeared, she was in Caesar's team. A young man was hit. Ah! The man screamed in panic. It was too late for him to run. Almost instantly he was frozen into an ice sculpture. Go stay in the painting. With a wave of her small hand, a cold wind blew in the room. At this time, they saw a shadow floating with the wind. Then, a portrait appeared on the wall. As the shadow entered, the portrait gradually took shape. After a few seconds, there was a figure on the blank painting. This person was the young man who had just been killed. Loveman. The others who were familiar with the deceased all cried out in pain. They couldn't save their companion. Everyone's hearts were dominated by unwillingness and hatred. They were unwilling to die in this place. They didn't want to die in the hands of such an undead. At this moment, everyone's heart was filled with killing intent. Kill her. You must kill her. If you don't kill her, all of them will become the same as the dead Loveman. Raising the weapons in their hands, they no longer passively dodged. Instead, they took the initiative to attack. This is too fun. Hee hee hee, look at how I catch you. The little loli didn't understand the tragic feelings of these people. Instead, she excitedly clapped her small hands. She seemed to be very happy. Kill her, kill this monster. Kill. A group of people held swords and staves and rushed towards the little loli who was smiling sweetly. Yao Yu's heart was filled with despair. It was useless. This was a spiritual body. Other than undead magic, there was also light magic. No magic or physical attack would have any effect on the spiritual body in front of them. And among them, other than her, there wasn't a necromancer. As for light magic, she looked in the direction of Ming-Shi. She knew that Ming-Shi had a talent for light magic. It was just that he rarely used light magic. She didn't know what level Ming-Shi's light magic had reached. Now she didn't care so much. Junior Ming-Shi, attack with me. Yao Yu used undead magic and chanted a curse. Okay. Ming-Shi responded. The sword in his hand was replaced with a staff. He rarely used magic. Compared to magic, swordsmanship was his most proficient skill. Chapter 498. Fengwu girl stepped aside and looked at the scene in front of her worriedly. What should she do now that her baby was not back yet? Because Xiaochun had purified a lot of evil spirits last time. He was leveling up and couldn't come out to help her now. What should she do? Without Xiaochun's help, no matter how fierce Fengwu girl's fighting chi was, it was impossible for her to do anything to the undead. After all, she was not a real necromancer. Without the help of the pure sword, even Fengwu girl couldn't do anything to the little lowly. Mingxi's light magic and Yao Yu's necromancy magic couldn't defeat the little lowly, but they bought some time for everyone. After the attack just now, even if they didn't want to admit it, they had to admit that their attacks were useless. This discovery made them desperate. At this time Zicheng suddenly moved. Everyone step back. I have a way to escape from this place, Zicheng said. After thinking about it again and again, Zicheng decided to take out the boundary-breaking talisman. This was an opportunity to gain a lot of favorability points. If she could save these people this time, she would definitely gain a lot of favorability points. At that time, she would definitely be able to make up for some of the points she had lost. Hearing Zicheng say that she had a way to leave, everyone's eyes lit up. Everyone felt a glimmer of hope in front of them. They had no time to distinguish whether Zicheng's words were true or false. They just wanted to live. Naturally, they couldn't wait to seize the only chance to live. Miss Zicheng, what is your way? Please tell us. Everyone spoke with a trace of caution. The way they looked at Zicheng had changed. Irene was a little surprised. She didn't expect Zicheng to be willing to take out the boundary-breaking talisman. Wasn't she afraid that the system would be exposed? But thinking about it, as long as one didn't transmigrate, who would think that a person would be bound to a system? Unless another transmigrating came, who would think of this? The others would probably only think that Zicheng had encountered some kind of opportunity. How could they possibly think of a system? They probably couldn't even think of what a system was. This talisman is called the boundary-breaking talisman. It can break through all barriers. However, this barrier is too strong. This boundary-breaking talisman can't break it completely. It can only open a passage. The passage will only last for about 3 breaths of time. If you want to leave, you have to pass through the passage within 3 breaths of time. Zicheng said. Then what are we waiting for? Miss Zicheng, hurry up and open the passage. Let's go now. Someone could not wait any longer. Who would want to stay in such a terrifying place? If they could leave, of course they would want to leave immediately. Were they waiting to be turned into an ice sculpture? Not yet. Zicheng shook his head. When the passage is open, we can't be disturbed. If she attacks, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape in time and we'll all die here. Everyone looked at each other. This meant that someone had to stay behind to be cannon fodder and attract the attention of that terrifying evil spirit. Otherwise, no one would be able to leave. But who would be the cannon fodder? Everyone looked at each other. No one wanted to be the cannon fodder. Looking at Mingxi and Yao Yu who were fighting with the little lowly, everyone's eyes lit up. Wasn't there a good candidate? As long as the two of them delayed the evil spirit, they would have the hope of escaping. In order to survive, the selfish side of human nature was infinitely magnified. Seeing what these people were thinking, Mojiaffre's face turned ugly. These two people were part of their team. Moreover, Mingxi's identity was not ordinary. Before leaving the school, the teacher had told him to protect Mingxi. He must not let anything happen to him. Although he did not know why the teacher was so protective of Mingxi, it did not stop him from guessing. He could imagine that Mingxi's identity was not ordinary. Even the school's teacher did not want to offend the power behind him. Skycliff, who had always had the best relationship with Ming, she stared at these people with unkind eyes. They actually wanted to leave Mingxi behind to cover their retreat. They really dared to think and dare to do it. Mingxi was the future king of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. These people dared to use the future 4 imperial emperors as cannon fodder? How audacious! Mingxi and Yao Yu were still concentrating on dealing with the little lowly evil spirit. They did not know that the two of them had been abandoned. In the minds of these people, there was nothing wrong with sacrificing 2 people to save more people. And only the 2 of them could deal with this evil spirit. If they had the ability to do so, They wouldn't mind sacrificing themselves. This was purely because this matter did not fall into their hands. Of course, they did not feel any pressure thinking this way. If they were really left behind to be cannon fodder, they would be a ghost. Miss Yao Yu and the others are the students of Notre Dame du Starlight. They must have the mentality of sacrificing themselves to save others. They will definitely agree to stay behind to help us. Someone said as if it was a matter of fact. Mojiofri and the others did not look good. It seemed like these people were determined to leave Mingxi and the others behind in order to survive. You guys really dare to dream. You are so noble. Why don't you stay behind to block? Huozhua looked at the person who spoke with disdain. I want to, but I am not a necromancer. Even if I want to block, I have to be able to. The person who spoke became more and more confident. Then why should Mingxi and Yao Yu stay? Skycliffe's cold voice came. Even in this kind of life and death situation, he was still so cold. There was not a trace of superfluous expression. As long as they stay, all of us can live. Isn't this reason enough? Do you want all of us to die together? Right now, as long as the two of them are willing to make a small sacrifice, all of us can live. Of course they will agree to such a profitable thing. Do you have any shame? Irene rolled her eyes. She did not want to see these people's ugly faces anymore. Donard stood silently on the side without saying anything. He wanted to live, but the only way to do so was to sacrifice two of his teammates. Although he didn't have a particularly deep friendship with these two people, they were still from the same school. Everyone had gotten into the top 10 of the extreme survival competition together, and had come here together. How could he just watch as the two of them were left behind? However, if he did not leave Mingxi and the others behind, the rest of them would die. What should he do now? He was confused, so he did not say a word. He left it to Mojiofri, who was the leader of the team, to decide. Even losing their lives is a small sacrifice? Irene was speechless. If death was not a big sacrifice, then what was? They won't necessarily die. Maybe they are lucky enough to survive. Someone said again. However, this voice sounded unspeakably guilty. You're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.